Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and you're watching TechStrong TV. Today's Monday, it's October 19th, and we've got a great lineup for you. We actually have a great week for you. It's a big week. It's my birthday this week, and it's a big birthday for me. I'm going to be taking a few days off to smell the roses. But DevOps, cloud security, regular security, cloud native, cybersecurity, digital transformation stop for no one. And we have a full week of activity highlighted by our third annual DevOps experience, a virtual event taking place all day on the 22nd. We've got amazing speakers. We've got KK, founder of Jenkins and now CEO of Launchable. We've got John Willis. We have Raven Emanuel. We have an amazing panel with Sarah Novotny, Kelsey Hightower, Andy Glover from Netflix, and then Droidio and Isaac Mascara from Armory, talking about the future of continuous delivery and Spinnaker. Just there's too many to name off the top of my head. A great panel or a great discussion with Helen Beal and Jane Grohl from DevOps Institute, and more. Check out DevOpsExperience.com. It's free, like all our virtual events are. So you can go register now. Join us Thursday. I think you're really going to love it. It's as good a time as any also to talk about our next virtual event, which is in November, and it's low code today. And we're going to take a good neutral look at low code, no code. The whole COVID situation has really elevated this to the forefront as people need to develop app and functionality quickly. So check that out as well, lowcodetoday.com. Let me tell you a little bit about today's show. We have Josh Steller of Fugue, who's going to talk about CSPM. They recently made an announcement around this. Josh is going to talk to us about it. We also have Patrick Cable from ThreatStack, who's going to talk about some common DevOps and DevSecOps challenges. I have Ryan Cartwright from Armory, who I mentioned Armory before. They're going to talk about their enhanced or ever-growing partnership with AWS, offering yet more and better ways to spin up Spinnaker at AWS. So good stuff going on there. We're going to go back into the vault today, and I want to bring up Jasmine James. My friend Jasmine, I first met this young lady over a year ago now, a year and a half maybe. She ran Delta's DevOps Center of Excellence, and just listening to her speak, I was immediately struck. This is a rock star in the making. She presented last year for us. I think it was at the RSA event, our DevSecOps event. She will be joining me on our DevOps Unbound video series, our special Halloween edition on October 30th. And but Jasmine recently left Delta. She's now at Twitter. So in honor of that, I wanted to go back into our vault and give you a little Jasmine James. I think you'll enjoy this one. As I said, it was from the RSA DevSecOps event. After that, we'll turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, who has today's headlines and news around the media ops community sites, as well as an interview with Zach Zilikakis, how digital transformation affects efforts and what organizations are doing on the pandemic. Zach, by the way, is with Apstra. And then Charlene also has a webinar preview. We have a full lineup of webinars this week, as usual. After that, we'll turn things over to Mitch in the analyst corner, Mitch Ashley of Accelerated Strategies Group. And then we have another double barrel of Mike Vizard, channel roundup. He has Red Hat, Jeff Jameson, talking about new customer advocacy program over at Red Hat. And then he has Kevin Kelly of AWS, Director of Education Programs for AWS Training, talking a little bit about what they've got going on there. And then I'll be back to wrap things up. It's just another great Monday on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Ground control to Major Tom. CI/CD pipe and put your observability on. Ground control to Major Tom.
10, 9, ignition
Commencing
sequence
countdown, engines on.
6, 5,
Check ignition and may God's love be with you.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, our first guest today is Josh Stella of Fugue. If you haven't heard of Fugue, you should check them out. They're doing a lot of interesting things around cloud security. And this CSPM announcement from Fugue and what it means for you is, I think, pretty newsworthy. We had a great conversation with Josh. Let's go to it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on another interview for TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Josh Stella. Josh is the co-founder CTO over at Fugue. Hey, Josh, welcome.
Hey, Alan, great to be here. Thank you.
So we spent a little bit of time talking about that cool background you have there, which is not some virtual background. It's actually a copper background with your record collection, homemade, your own guitars that you're making and everything else. We don't have a lot of time to jump into the whole music thing, but it's very cool. Josh, I don't know, as far as I remember, and I might forget now and then, but I don't think we've had anyone from Fugue on TechStrong TV before.
I don't think on TechStrong TV. You and I have talked a couple times, but not in this context. Yeah.
Yep. So, we get to put a face with the name and the voice, but for our audience who may have heard of Fugue, may not have heard of Fugue, but certainly may not know, what it's about. Why don't we start there, right? What's Fugue about? What do you guys do?
Sure. Well, thanks. So what Fugue does, well, first, I founded Fugue with my co-founder coming out of AWS. And the reason Fugue exists is to secure cloud infrastructure. We saw early on that cloud infrastructure configuration would become the primary vulnerability surface, the primary attack surface for hackers. And so what Fugue is here to do is to secure your cloud configurations and to make sure they're in compliance with whatever your policies are, all the way through the software development lifecycle. And I think the other thing that sets Fugue apart in this kind of world of cloud computing is because the cloud, from a customer perspective, is software defined, right? It's all API controlled. That means security is actually a software engineering and computer science problem, not just a monitoring and infrastructure problem. So we have a SaaS product that you can get started with in 5 minutes that will visualize your whole infrastructure and show you where you have risk. If you're a developer, an individual engineer, you can use it for free forever. But we scale all the way up to huge enterprises like SAP NS2, AT&T, Red Ventures, folks with hundreds of thousands of cloud resources. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Today, we are going to dive in on, help me here, cloud security, CS.
Cloud
PM,
Security
right?
Posture Management, CSPM, a wonderful Gartner description for cloud security and compliance.
Yes.
I like the English version.
It's funny. So I co-founded a company called Still Secure, and we had this great product, and we were terrible at names. Terrible, Josh. Like, the name for our product was Security, Posture, Compliance, Management, something. And I forgot what the initials added up to, but that was our name. And then, Gartner came out with something they called NAC, or they didn't come out with a product, but they decided what we were doing was NAC, Network Access Control.
Got it. Well, I don't know how good we are at names. Our company's Fugue, and Fugue is a form of music composition. So
Yes, it is.
There's a theme here.
Yep. Yeah. Emerson, Lake, and Parma. But anyway, that being said, though, let's talk about, as you mentioned, it's really about compliance. How does this all come together here, and talk to us about it?
Sure. So I think the best way to understand cloud security is to examine cloud hacks, to understand how the hackers are penetrating and usually doing one of two things or both of them, stealing data and or stealing compute resources for things like cryptojacking. And if you look at the reports in the news, often they're massively overly simplified compared to what the hacker's actually doing. But 9 times out of 10 at least, they are exploiting aspects of your cloud configuration, things like your identity and access management policies combined with your storage policies, combined with your use of regions to surreptitiously perform these hacks. And so the attack surface has changed. And this is why we're announcing just now a second generation of cloud security posture management. In the first generation of cloud security posture management, what you had were products that would examine, for example, logs of change. Well, the problem with that is, if you look at some of the high-profile hacks, you can steal everything out of S3 if you have the right permissions and the right knowledge and discovery of S3, of data storage in S3, very, very quickly. It's no longer a scenario where people are slowly exfiltrating data. It is just sudden and you're done. So that's not nearly good enough. So what we've done at Fugue is we have a complete picture of your entire cloud infrastructure at all times. We're not relying on events alone. And we can tell you if you have vulnerabilities that hackers are exploiting. We actually have a whole library of policies that we write based on our own research of how hackers are breaking in. So I don't know. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope it gives some idea.
No, I think it does, and it absolutely does. There's a couple of things that kind of, come to mind with this. And look, the whole, and I have friends, in the IAM space, being in the security world all this time. One of the nice things about, cloud-based IAM and stuff was the ability to have, one domain, if you will, or domainless is another way of looking at it, but really to simplify 12 different sign-ons, right? I have one identity or that can go to my storage, to my, all my various profiles, all my various resources, whether we're talking about an individual's identity and access management or entities. But at the same token, and I think it points out the soft white underbelly of it is, well, when you start consolidating like that, you maybe increase your attack surface.
Well, you certainly
Right?
increase the blast radius.
Yeah, or the blast rate is probably better than the attack surface, right?
I mean,
One thing goes bad, the whole thing goes bad.
yeah, if somebody gets the keys to the kingdom, and they don't necessarily have to be admin level permissions,
No.
they can access far more than they could before because the cloud is a distributed system.
Yep.
One quick clarification though, IAM in cloud, where we see most of the vulnerabilities is not the individual user's credentials, which is how
Entity.
people, I think, it's the entities. That's right. It's
Machine identity. and so
yes,
forth, yeah.
yeah, exactly. IAM is a
I-
network in the cloud.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But this is the classic security conundrum. You don't want to be the people who put the brakes on, right? You don't want to, because there's a lot of good that happens as a result of consolidating these identities and allowing pieces, to flow, information to flow back and forth and easily and in a seamless fashion. But, yes, you want the attitude to be, yes, we can, right? It's not, no, we can't. Yes, we can, but here's how we got to do it that makes sense from a security and compliance point of view as well. Otherwise, we're going to really, wind up in trouble here. And I think that historically, and it's not just cloud-based IAM, it's been a problem with security all along, right? Is the tendency to be is not yes we can, but no you can't.
Yeah. Because
it's a security problem, and we don't offer solutions. Where Fugue is here with a solution. Yes, we can.
I love that. And you're so right. So my background is I'm a developer and a software architect. And velocity matters so much. Creativity, the ability to try things matters a lot. So there is an elegant answer to this in our product as this second generation CSPM, where what we're going to do is warn you if very particular things that you're doing are dangerous. And we're going to warn you early in the software development life cycle. So instead of you going through a big security audit at the end or having one of these, big vendors scan things at the end and the security team give you a report, Jenkins or Circle CI can return to you, hey, if this particular EC2 instance has list permissions to S3, that might get you in trouble because of the configuration. So we can be more specific because we have that state machine of all the configuration, we have all the context, and we can fully automate it so that developers are getting, and engineers in general, are getting automated feedback from the tool chain instead of waiting for some bureaucratic process. So, it's all about opening as many possibilities to engineers as are safe and explaining to them when they're doing things that aren't safe in an automated way, just like a compiler tells you if you make a code error.
Makes perfect sense to me. Josh, there's another element to that, and it's all what, at its heart, what I think is really enabled this whole DevSecOps movement, and that is we want to make tools that developers can use, not that the security person can use necessarily. So the idea of having something that works within their CI/CD pipeline, right? And even prior to deployment says, hey, if you do this, not citing, some arcane CVN or something like that. But really, hey, here's what problem this creates. You want to live with that? Knock yourself out. But here's the issue. And that is a very different, I think developers would get turned off when they hear, this is NIST CVE 2.675 and, it's a critical vulnerability that you're doing here and it would be one of 100 things listed. When you could talk developers and things that make sense to them, I've never met a developer who says, I really have an interest in developing some real low quality, crappy, buggy code. They're not. Right?
Well,
they're craftspeople. They take pride in it.
They do. We do. I'm one. Yes, the tooling hasn't been there. So in the past, I've worked a lot in national security where I would go through NIST certification and accreditation as kind of the end gate of getting a system the authority to operate, an ATO, as they call it. The problem with that is, as a developer, as an engineer in general, right? I've been a systems administrator, I've been a developer, I've been a cloud architect. In all of these engineering roles, what you're responding to is feedback from the system, right? If you're writing a program in C and you get a cast wrong, the compiler's going to tell you. If you're trying to configure something in Unix that isn't working, you can examine the configuration and the behaviors and determine what you got wrong. And it's a very iterative process. We know iteration is the way to build great systems. The problem is security has been a gate, not an iterative feedback loop. And so what Fugue gives you...
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, that's a great vision.
Well, look, I don't want to be wrong. I just need tools to help me be right. And the way I'm going to be more right is by getting iteration and things telling me. So Fugue is designed that way. Prior to deployment, you can only catch about half, maybe less, maybe 30% of errors prior to deployment because of API side effects in cloud. But we operate all the way through the life cycle. And you made an interesting comment, which is, the developers need to be in the loop. So do the security teams. And so what Fugue does is the same policies where we're giving developers feedback up front, the security teams using Open Policy Agent instead of some proprietary thing, the security teams can use to monitor post-deployment because the cloud is mutable. So you build something right, and then somebody goes in and opens a dangerous hole. That same policy as code can operate throughout the entire SDLC.
Got it. Excellent. Josh, we're about out of time. It goes quick, but so you've got this announcement, this next version available now on the website?
It's available now. We ship about every 2 weeks. So yeah, if you go to fugue.co, you can sign up for a free version. We'll do full visualization. We have a full data warehouse. We have the complete configuration of all your infrastructure. Give it a try. I think we are winning a lot of customers from the early cloud security vendors. And the reason is we are just have capabilities way beyond what's available elsewhere, and you can use it for free forever at a relatively small scale. 1,500 cloud resources, something like that.
That's not that small. That's pretty generous.
Very cool.
Excellent, man. All right, Josh Stella, CTO, co-founder of Fugue here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Patrick Cable is someone who's had a lot of experience in cyber and developer advocacy and so forth. He's with ThreatStack, and we had a good discussion catching up with Patrick, talking about some common pitfalls, challenges around DevOps, DevSecOps. Here now is my interview with Patrick Cable of ThreatStack.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and you're watching another segment on TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Patrick Cable of ThreatStack. Hey Patrick, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey Alan, nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Patrick, we've covered ThreatStack certainly over the years here at MediaOps on I think across all three of our main sites. But for those who maybe aren't familiar or they've heard the name, but they're not quite sure, why don't you give us a little kind of threat stack background, and while you're at it, a little bit of your own personal background?
Yeah, sure. So, Threat Stack is cloud optimized intrusion detection and, kind of compliance and security for, cloud workloads, right? So I've been there since 2000. Wow, I've been there since 2016. So this is my fourth year at the Stack, and I'm our director of security and reliability engineering, SRE. Usually people say site reliability engineering. We decided to twist it up a little bit and make it something of our own.
So you've got your own SRE.
Yes.
That's very cool. But, I do want to talk a little bit about site reliability engineers.
Yeah, 100%.
SR, the conventional SREs, if you will.
Yeah.
And, you guys, Threat Stack sits at a unique kind of junction, right? Where you and many of the DevSecOps companies do, right? Where you got to have one foot, in the developer on the left side of the house, if you will, with dev and, some of the DevOps teams, and then one foot in the right side of the house with our ops, our SRE folks, and the security teams, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Security has, there's still security teams. There's not enough of us, but there's still security teams. So I imagine that gives you a pretty unique kind of view, if you will, into how this whole fits together. Tell us.
Yeah. So one of the things that has always kind of drawn me to both security and also operations is I've noticed that over the years, some of the folks that have the highest ability to impact production security are the DevOps, are the ops folks that actually have access to production, right? So it's one of the things that we've tried to do with creating security and reliability engineering, kind of mashing that up with site reliability engineering and all of these other kind of functions that help keep the data flowing, has always been in kind of, making security the first class of being able to run a production service. The thing that I always think about when I think about, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability is part of security, right? So for me, it's natural that these functions kind of live together, work together, and that, we're able to, work to make that happen within our own platform.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Another CIA. Just like another SRE, there's another CIA.
Yep.
So, so talk to us, Patrick. What are you seeing? How these different stakeholders, because that's kind of what they are at the end of the day, right? We all have a stake in our business that we work for, right? And I don't mean an ownership, but our stake, what we do. How are you, current state of things, and of course that probably means with COVID, right? And how it's affected stuff. What are you seeing? How are things working?
So, we're very fortunate in that, we've always a lot of engineering organizations are used to being able to produce and be able to have output from wherever they are. From the internal perspective of, how are we doing and how are we able to kind of take all these security outcomes and map them to engineering outcomes and all of that. One of the things that it kind of comes naturally because we are a security company, right? So we have to be part of, these discussions as they happen. And, I think what you see is that, I think a lot of folks look at SecDevOps as, okay, you have one person doing all three things. I don't necessarily know that I agree with that definition. I do think that what SecDevOps means, or what DevOps means, or whatever collection of words that you want to put together means, is that these things are thought of by the other people in the org, right? Instead of the developer just saying, I write code and I don't have to worry about it later, they know a little bit about how the code actually runs in production, and they know a little bit about what happens on the security side. And it's kind of my role to take all of these things and bring them together so that folks can actually achieve that outcome, right? I don't think it's reasonable for a team to have every piece of that experience and be able to shift features and whatnot. But I do think it is 100% possible to take somebody with a specialty, say that they're the dev, or they're more on the ops side, or they're more on the security side, and say, hey, here's the lay of the land. Here's all the other parts of this, and here's the things that you need to know about it. It doesn't mean that they're going to be able to execute 100% on that, but that's fine. We try to make a very collaborative, we try to make this process collaborative. And we've had a pretty good success doing that. One of the things that has helped a lot in making this happen has always been, my team has always tried to be very outgoing, and also, seek out other folks when we see that they're doing a thing that, or like trying to accomplish something, and say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you this design, this works, but what about this other option here? Or I see that you implemented it this way. You probably may want to do some checking around this. And that's kind of the real magic of what we've been able to accomplish. And given that everybody has their own area of expertise, we just try to supplement.
Yep. I mean, so Patrick, this is something I have a little background in, right? I was also in the security space 20 years, right? 15 years before I started DevOps.com. And truthfully, security is one of the reasons I got into DevOps to begin with, because I thought it was a great thing. But when we first started this whole DevSecOps thing, and I've been doing the DevSecOps days at RSA, the DevSecOps Monday of RSA conference for 5-6 years now. One of the things we did there was that there was only one DevOps, right? DevOps is DevOps. And it's development's part of it, operations is part of it, security is part of it, testing is part of it. It's DevOps. We almost added the sec piece to it, not to make the devs think sec, but to make sure the security people felt like they were in the middle of it, right? Yes. And that's why it's DevSecOps. They're right in the middle of it, right? Now, security people say, no, it should be SecDevOps because security is most important. But we wanted security in the middle of it. And quite frankly, it was an interesting dynamic back then. If you asked most security people, they said, I alone can deliver security, and not only deliver it, but we alone are the only people who care about security. No one else cares about security. Those developers, they can give a flying you-know-what about security. They just want to get code done on time. When you went to ask the developer, and then by extension, the fledgling DevOps community 7, 8 years, 9 years ago, they would tell you those security people are impossible. All they ever say is no. They talk a totally different language than everyone else in the organization, right? And they want to try to force us to use tools that were designed for them that really aren't relevant to us.
Right.
And it's taken, as we sit here today, Patrick, 7, 8 years later, we've seen this community and this tribe come together a little bit, where you know what, companies like ThreatStack, you guys, you're making tools that are developer friendly to a certain extent, right? You don't need to have your CISSP and 3 SANS certification to use the damn thing, right?
It's very true, and that is as much true for our product offering as it is the internal stuff that myself and my team has built. Right, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is with security tooling, there are so many defaults, there are so many settings that really take some time to figure out what the optimal end goal is. But if you take away the complexity for the developer, if you take away the complexity for the folks that need just the day-to-day thing to work, it actually works out fine. One of the first things that I had set up internally to ThreatSec was the ability to dynamically generate credentials for AWS. A developer never has credentials that last longer than an hour. Well, a lot of times that kind of initiative would take a lot of convincing on the dev side of things. It was very easy because they ran one command, they did their two-factor, and they were done. And they didn't have to think about it. They didn't have to fight about it. They didn't have to copy paste something into a different file. And I think that as tooling evolves and we're getting better at creating security tooling that is scriptable, that you can take the output and do other things with, I think that you start to see a whole lot of opportunity open up for building all kinds of things that both make development safer and also give them the inspiration to say, oh, this actually is possible. This isn't some like scary thing that I can't absorb because there's only the security team can figure this out. I can do this too. And that's been the really exciting part about that evolution that you just talked about is so much new tooling is coming out that is making this way better.
Yep. Now, back to this SRE thing. And I don't mean just security reliability. I'm talking about site reliability engineering. When we first envisioned this whole DevOps and DevSecOps thing, SRE wasn't a thing. I mean, there were people doing the SRE role, but we didn't call it SRE. I don't think we recognized the real, the critical role that it plays. But it does. It plays a critical role. It plays a critical role in security, as I'm sure you'll tell us, and it plays a critical role in the whole DevOps thing, right? Because feedback loops, reiteration, continuous improvement, continuous deployment. The SREs are right there with that. They're intrinsically part of it. So they're intrinsically connected to DevOps, and they're also, security, post-deployment security is huge, right? So from where you sit, in your catbird seat, how do you see this interaction?
Well, like I said earlier, availability is part of security. Availability is part of having something, that people can use and enjoy. Many years ago, I was part of an engagement where at the end, we were delivering a report, and somebody had said, either you get the business right or you get the code right, but usually not both, right?
Yeah.
Like you
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Well, and you certainly can't get the code right if you don't have the business that's there, right? So that that really kind of was a great one-liner, but it really kind of put into context how important it is for these teams to work together, right? And from where I'm sitting in within my org, it's been really nice to see that collaboration. I think industry-wide, I think you're starting to see more of that collaboration happen in smaller orgs, and I think part of it's just easier, right? When the org is new, you can start with that mindset and you can push that forward. If you already have kind of a large traditional security org, that's a little bit harder to kind of make that shift. But I think truly that things are evolving across a lot of different companies, and it's been really exciting to see that not only in a variety of industries, banking and whatnot, but also even the security startup space. You see a lot of newer security startups that are doing the same thing and having success there. So that's very encouraging as well.
Absolutely is. Patrick, we've got a few minutes left. Let's talk a little bit about threats, beyond the relationship to DevOps security and all that.
Sure.
It certainly has been unusual times over these last 6-8 months, whatever it's been. What are you guys seeing? How's COVID changed your business?
Oh, so it's one of the things that's always hard as a SaaS company is the just the uncertainty of how people need to react in their own security organizations, right? But one of the things that we've been able to help organizations out with is the fact that one of our offerings is a managed security operations center. So for many businesses, that is that's a good benefit to have, right? If they've had to cut security within their own orgs, at least they can lean on us a little bit to say to make sure that they're getting all of the value out of, hey, this thing came in and it looks weird, letting folks know that happens. And I think that's been really the big thing for us in this COVID time.
I think it has. I mean, again, I've said this before on other interviews, is, we don't realize how kind of blessed we are in our industry, because we did move to SaaS. So much of what we do in technology is around, we call it SaaS ops, right? Our infrastructures are SaaS based, and the applications we use, they're not. Could you imagine if we were depending on Exchange in the server closet with Active Directory?
Well, and even in that scenario, it's harder for you to say, well, based on volume, I'm going to maybe have a few less mail exchanges, right? Like, that's a harder decision to actually execute on if you've already bought the servers, if you already paid for the servers and you're not getting as much value out of it anymore. So certainly, definitely very lucky to be in an API-driven world right now.
Exactly. Anyway, you know what? People want to get more information about ThreatStack, threatstack.com? That's
correct.
Very cool. Patrick, thanks for joining us on TechStrong TV.
Thanks,
Come back with an update soon.
Yeah, we'll do.
All righty. Hey, this is Alan Schimmel. This is TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with another guest in a moment.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Well, Armory's certainly been in the news a whole bunch lately, from raising or announcing their Series C round of $40 million to enhanced Armory offerings across all public cloud infrastructures. In this interview, we caught up with Ryan Cartwright of their partner program, who talks about their enhanced partnership with AWS as they jointly bring a Spinnaker offering to the market. Here's Ryan Cartwright from Armory.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV, here with Ryan Cartwright from Armory Network, and Ryan's going to talk to us about the Armory AWS relationship, and we're going to explore that right now. Hey Ryan, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey, good morning, Alan. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Ryan, I guess we should tell people, start off with, what's your role with Armory?
So within Armory, I'm on the go-to-market team. So on the sales side, but I also manage the partnership with some of our strategic alliance partners, such as AWS.
Very cool. And Ryan, well, our audience is familiar enough with Armory, but of course, Armory is the company that is, making a commercial version, commercial support for Spinnaker. It's beyond just pure Spinnaker, though. It's a whole CI/CD platform that Armory continues to build out. And we've had plenty of Armory background, of course, here on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and TechStrong TV. I wanted to focus in today, though, on the Armory AWS relationship, Ryan. Why don't you give us kind of a brief history of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Armory just almost coming on 2 years now, And when I first joined, they were one of the major cloud providers that was providing kind of support and basically we call golden paths to production to Spinnaker. So Spinnaker had native support to EC2, Kubernetes with EKS, and also ECS. So they were one of the early kind of adopters of cloud providers, just providing just native support. And then I can kind of talk about the journey since then as we go through this discussion.
Sure. So they were providing native Spinnaker support, but there wasn't sort of a formal partnership at that point between Armory and AWS. When did that happen?
The formal partnership happened in 2019, but it was really, we were a small startup at that time, so we were just getting our feet wet, and we were trying to figure out what are all the the partner requirements. So with any of the major cloud providers, they have certificate requirements, certain level of technical skill set that we need to have. So we kind of took inventory of that and then decided how we would want to kind of formalize that partnership. So we started out as kind of just a basic partner. And then over the last year, we kind of gathered our internal resources to create our AWS marketplace offering, to have more of our engineers get AWS certified. And we've recently joined and became an advanced technology partner. And then that opened up a few other opportunities.
All right. So what, people hear names like advanced technology partner, strategic partner, what have you. But in this case, what does that really mean, Ryan?
Yeah, so what that means for us is we were invited to a global startup program. That program is about to hit its 1-year anniversary. And what that really means is they're aligned to provide kind of go-to-market marketing funds. And that is either in the form of kind of joint webinars, invited to kind of consulting partner summits, which is taking place this week. So we'll be having a discussion to their strategic partners on how Armor and how Spinnaker can better support and be a potential solution for their end customers.
Excellent. And then let's jump in now, if you don't mind, Ryan, a little bit into, there's a lot of AWS partners, frankly, right? We have the AWS Community Hub on DevOps.com with a rotating cast of AWS partners. The marketplace has umpteen things. Let's get specific. What do where rubber meets the road, what are you guys doing with AWS? And if for our AWS customers out there, and there's many of them, right? What should they be looking for? Why should they care?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the most recent things that we've done is we had a joint effort with one of our customers, Autodesk. They had some requirements around Lambda support. Last year, Spinnaker had created Lambda support, but it was really called a partial checkbox support. It wasn't that great and that native. Our engineering teams jointly worked together over the past 3 months to really beef up that integration, and it's going to become available in the latest .23 release. So it was just really a deep collaboration from kind of project management side all the way down to core engineering, and how do we get more teams within AWS becoming core contributors to different integrations within Spinnaker.
Excellent. And what are you hearing from the field on this stuff?
So hybrid cloud and multi-cloud is becoming a reality. It's been kind of this buzzword for the last kind of 5 years. It's actually becoming a reality now, especially with all the M&A activity going on. Companies are buying companies that are adopting. They may have Google, they may have Microsoft, they may have on-prem with VMware. There's not going to be one cloud that wins. It's going to be a multi-cloud approach. And at the rate of change with these cloud providers are creating new features, new products, it's impossible for companies to stay up to date and do it themselves like they've done for the past few decades. So having the cloud providers provide these golden paths into their solutions, specifically for AWS, it's Fargate, it's ECS, it's Kubernetes, it's Lambda, it's traditional EC2 VM deployments. There's going to be choice and flexibility, and power is shifting over to the engineering side, and the engineers are going to write their software to take advantage of the best technology that's available to them.
I agree with you. So, the thing about Spinnaker, Ryan, right, is I think for a lot of people out here in our audience, they say, oh, Spinnaker, it's really good if you're Netflix or, JP Morgan or, some really large, super, Fortune 100, Fortune, 200 kind of organization. But is it going to help me where I am? So, talk to what's the right size? What is the right customer, the right user profile?
Yeah, I think if you looked at when Spinnaker became open source in 2016, when Netflix open sourced it, Netflix has high velocity, high scale, and a lot of companies just weren't at that size and scale within running in the cloud. I think over time we've taken the past year or two to really focus a lot on safety of deployments and ensuring like high safety deployments, minimizing risk and downtime, becoming more secure. So we still see a lot of large enterprises, global 2000s running Spinnaker, but we're starting to see a shift and more of the cloud native and startups running it. And one area that we're working with AWS specifically is within their SaaS Factory program. So their SaaS Factory is a program within AWS to help companies create a SaaS offering for their solution, make sure it's following all of the best practices for multi-tenancy, security. So we have an early design partner program right now offering our Spinnaker as a service called Armory Cloud. That should be released to the broader audience at the end of the year. But right now we're still looking for design partners to make sure that we're building the right thing first instead of the wrong thing first. So that's open right now. We have some information on our page about that on armory.io. And I know our program manager, Chris Tan, is actively looking and interviewing customers and questions. So we're seeing small, kind of born in the cloud startups that are seed funded Series A that may have 5 or 10 engineers. There's no longer a big lift and shift to get a bunch of resources up and running in your cloud. You can just it's turnkey.
Nice. Very cool. So Ryan, when we, that's a great, this program you were referencing, SaaS Factory, or is that what it's called? Great example of the benefits of an AWS partnership. What other can you give us some other kind of tangible programs or activities that the AWS Armory partnership is spinning up?
Yes. So as part of both the Global Startup Program and the Advanced Partnership, we got what's called MDF, or Marketing Development Funds. We can use those funds to develop, whether it's a white paper, an ebook, a video. They have third-party marketing resources that jointly work with us. So we're taking advantage of a couple of those opportunities. We have a couple ebooks that are in flight. We have a new, our AWS Marketplace offering went live. So we're creating a ebook to kind of walk through what the process would be if you're an organization that has an AWS EDP to be able to consume Spinnaker and Armory through that program and make it kind of very simple for customers to kind of understand and walk through. There's a lot of noise out there and a lot of different documents, but some are super high level for the executives. Some are very technical. Other ones you just need to have kind of more instructional type documentation. So we're taking advantage of a bunch of these marketing development fund opportunities.
Sure. Excellent. So Ryan, though the formal partnership is, a year old or more, it just seems like a lot of these things are now starting to happen, right? Things are coming together. You can't make wine before it's time, right? And now's the right time. Looking forward, what other kind, don't say anything you're not allowed to talk about, obviously, but what other kind of, partner or opportunities may be available to our audience as a result of this AWS Armory partnership?
So I'll talk about maybe my time at VMware for a moment, and I'm not sure if this exists fully at AWS yet, but when I was at VMware, I worked in the hands-on labs, very popular at VMworld. It was a chance to test out new technology. So AWS, I know when they have reInvent, this year it's going to be all virtual, but hopefully we'll have a chance to be able to showcase different integration points of Spinnaker. I know there's a lot of solutions that Spinnaker doesn't integrate with, but it's only a matter of time probably before those integrations take place before customers start asking about them. So it's really, you can't build what you don't know. So we always ask for feedback. What's the next hot topic? What's the next solution that's going to be available? I know there's a lot of discussion. I think I've seen some on your blog about, AI and ML. There's some new AI and ML workloads that AWS has that we have a couple customers using that are asking for more native integration.
Excellent, man. So, Ryan, we got another minute or two left here. I want to make sure we covered everything that we want to cover around this partnership, around what's happening with Spinnaker and Armory on AWS. Anything we left out, or anything else you want to bring up to our audience?
I think the one final thought is the other benefit of this program is, I guess there's different compensations for the field reps within AWS. So their account managers, their partner managers, getting involved in these partnerships kind of unlocks some more of those benefits to kind of expand your workforce. So if you're a startup and you have, say sub $10 million in ARR, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to spend some resources, getting into the AWS partnership has been very beneficial to us because it's now giving us access to hundreds of thousands of kind of field reps that are out there with all of the major customers in the world. So it's a chance to really scale if you put a lot of kind of effort up front. I think the benefits are starting to really pay off now.
Yeah, and my background, I was a VP of Biz Dev channels for years and years back 15 years ago. And in my days, it wasn't Amazon. It was companies like Hewlett Packard and Extreme Networks and, some of the big tech players back then, Novell even. And you're right, IBM. It takes time. When you're dealing with organizations of that scale, right, you just don't turn on a switch and it happens. It takes a year or sometimes more to really make that to really turn on a partnership, to really see the fruits of it. Back then we didn't have marketplaces like they did now. You had to go do an overlay where you may have had a sales team with a dozen people and you're trying to, overlay a sales team of hundreds or thousands, and it just doesn't. It was a hard job. Now with everything being in marketplaces, of course, it's a little easier, but it's still you need to get people on board. Everybody has to be pulling in the same direction. Everyone has to understand what the offering is about. What are the benefits? Why should the end users care? And so it seems like now we're starting to see that.
Yeah, it's really been kind of a journey, both internally selling it to the executives and to the different teams within Armory, because there's a lot of resources that need to kind of get bought into it. Once that takes place, I'm starting to kind of see a bunch of cross-functional, just partnerships between the engineering sides, between Armory and AWS, between the sales sides, between Armory and AWS, between the executives. So it's across the board, but it takes time. It's not a light switch that happens overnight.
No, for sure not. Hey, man, I want to wish you well. Good luck with this partnership. Good work to now rubber starts meeting the road, right? And hopefully it results in more choice for all of our audience out here. All righty.
Yeah,
Ryan Cartwright.
Me,
Thank you. Ryan Cartwright from Armory here, discussing the Armory AWS partnership. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest. I remember the first time I saw Jasmine Jane speak. It was at a GitLab commit in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I saw her and said, "This woman is destined for great things." She was already great. She was the head of the DevOps Center of Excellence at Delta Airlines, and she presented for us at the RSA event this past year on DevSecOps. It's a pleasure to have her there. Jasmine has left Delta. She's now started a Twitter, and I'm really happy for her in her new role. I think she'll do great things. She's a great person. She's also going to appear on our October 30th DevOps Unbound event. which is a roundtable you can register for and ask questions live. We'll be in costume. Maybe you will too. So hope to see you then. Anyway, back from RSA last year, DevSecOps event. Jasmine James, at the time with Delta, now with Twitter.
Zero North delivers a platform that enables companies to orchestrate their vulnerability scanning tools across the software development lifecycle. We can help you identify where there may be vulnerabilities and risks and help you prioritize and remediate that. It is impossible for companies to understand where there's risk and vulnerability from application infrastructure and to tie that all together. With Zero North, we make that impossible possible.
Our next speaker is Jasmine James from Delta Airlines. I've been working with Jasmine for a couple years now, a couple times already this year. She's got a phenomenal story. What we're talking about here is we're going to continue the conversation on what it takes to transform your organization, because I think most people, when they start DevSecOps and DevOps, they're thinking about tooling instead of what's going to happen with the transformation of the company itself in order to accept that whole change that's going to happen. So Jasmine, come on up. Yeah. Doing good? Yeah. And you got your slides up. And she's also an author of the Epic Failures in DevSecOps, which you can get a copy at lunch. Okay, please, Jasmine James.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so I've been told to project, so I might look like I'm screaming, but it's only because I want to make sure you all can hear me. So how's everybody doing this morning? All right, so I'm a high energy speaker. I'm going to be engaging with you as I share my story. So very excited to be here at my first ever DevSecOps Days. I've heard great things about this event, so thank you to Sonatype, Mark Miller, Derek Weeks, and Alan for having me here. Really, really great stuff. All right, so Delta Airlines DevOps transformation. So my name is Jasmine James, as Mark mentioned. I am the leader of the DevOps Center of Excellence at Delta, and we're responsible for really three aspects. The first one being our development tools. So everything a developer touches, my team owns. We're also responsible for developer practice, so how they're developing code within industry and Delta-specific standards. We're responsible for the cultural transformation. I'll talk a little bit about our dojo during the presentation. The last aspect that was just recently added to my plate is our application developer experience as it pertains to cloud. So I'll talk a little bit about all of that, but just wanted to share some context. So what you don't hear me say is security. So I am solely within the developer realm. There's actually another part of our organization that handles security and application security, and I'm working closely to try to invoke that into our DevOps pipeline now. So more to come on that. All right, so you probably heard of us. So a couple of things about Delta is that we serve over 200 million people every single year, and we have a network of over 300 destinations in 50 countries. I'm headquartered in Atlanta, which is also the busiest hub ever, with over 1,000 daily departures. 1,000 daily departures to over 225 destinations. And we have a lot of people that work for Delta, 90,000 as of last year. So all of that connectivity is enabled by great people. And we were also recognized in some great ways last year. We were 2019 Best Place to Work for Women and a top engineering company to work for as a software engineer. So the latter one was a bit of a surprise for most people, but we do have a great IT organization. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of pose to you was the fact that we're focusing on really adapting, right? So the travel industry has adjusted many different, keeps moving. The travel industry has adjusted in many different ways for the past 10 years, right? So how many of you flew into San Francisco to be here at RSA? Raise your hand. Okay. So keep your hand up if you flew on, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ask who you flew. But I want you to think about how technology enabled your journey to get here, right? So whether it was from using a QR code to check in on your flight or even looking to see which gate you were at. It's safe to say that innovation has enabled your journey to be smoother and less stressful. And that's one of the things that we're focusing on at Delta, innovation. So one of the great things we were able to do a month and a half ago, we were the only airline to ever give a keynote at CES. So it was a really great presentation that our CEO, Ed Bastian, gave. And during that presentation, he talks a lot about some of the ways that we want to improve your journey, the experience of your journey. So I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things. So the first way that we're going to be doing that, starting this summer in the Detroit airport, is the ability for an individual to see personalized signage as they walk through the airport, utilizing their human naked eye. So we partnered with a company called Misapplied Sciences, and now in Detroit this summer, and if an individual walks to look at a screen to figure out where their flight is, they'll see information specific to them, which is really, really neat. So if you want to find out more information about that, you can definitely search the net for the presentation. But that's just one of the ways that we want to set our experience apart from others. So all of the innovation that I talked about has to be enabled and delivered reliably and with quality. So that leads me to our DevOps transformation, which I actually was a part of in its infancy, starting in 2017. So the next thing I want to do is kind of walk you through what that timeline looked like for us at Delta. So in 2016, we had a CIO join our company. His name is Rahul Samant. He's now an executive vice president at Delta. And he had a rough first couple of months. So in the first couple of months of him starting, we had a huge data center outage, which grounded all of our flights for about 2 days. So that is definitely a rough first couple of months. So naturally, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on reliability and making sure that our infrastructure was resilient enough to support our operations. And I'm not sure what phantom is moving my slides, but we'll keep going back. We focused on reliability on our infrastructure. Also in 2017, about the time I started, we wanted to start to set the stage for new developer tooling. I also own the legacy tooling, which includes ClearCase. Anybody still using ClearCase out there? No, I didn't think so. Thank goodness, because it's not fun. But my team is working on migrating all of our development community from it. But we wanted to make sure that we were setting the stage for not only modern tooling that could enable fast delivery of that value that we want to get into our customers' hands, but also being able to attract top talent. There's no way I can put out a job requisition today with ClearCase on it and I'm going to get any real bite. So we wanted to make sure that we are attracting top talent as well. So that was established. We decided to go with GitLab, Jenkins, Nexus, and some other tools in order to establish that main tool chain. In the latter part of 2017, we also focused on our agile transformation. So this was aligning our business and technology partners to make sure that we were delivering what we wanted to get to our customers in a very efficient manner. So all of that started initially. I'm not sure what's going on here. Keeps moving. Moving on to 2018. So a lot of work that was done in 2017, we worked on making sure we were disseminating that. And this is where our DevOps dojo comes into play. So in 2018, middle of 2018, we launched our first dojo. And this is an immersive experience, and you heard Ross kind of allude to it, in which we wanted to make sure that the teams that were utilizing all of the new tooling, new practice, new culture, were able to be immersed in that environment. Instead of just telling them to go do it, we taught them how to go about that. All right. In 2019, this was last year, I talked a little about our cloud journey. And one of the main things about our cloud journey that really kind of was enabled by our DevOps transformation is the ability for us to deploy microservice into the public and private cloud. So we set the stage by adopting a platform as a service, OpenShift. And with that, we were able to give our developers the ability and empower them to use infrastructure as code, leverage common methodology such as Ansible, complex deployment methodologies like Canary and Blue Green, and they were able to deploy a lot faster. Heading into 2020, we're focused on AWS now in Azure and being able to flex into the public cloud via a hybrid model. So that's our DevOps journey in a gist. I want to now move on to some of the challenges that we faced while we were on that journey. So the first thing that we faced was tooling. I talked a lot about our legacy tooling. So the challenge that I have today as a leader is ensuring that not only our developers can be enabled with this tooling, but how do I give them like for like? You would think that GitLab and Nexus and Jenkins are, so much better than the legacy tools, but really when you have a large IT organization with developers that have been there for 15, 20, 25 years, it's more difficult to kind of sell it and get that buy-in. So one of the challenges that we faced is through a migration. So we've kind of gotten to the point where, those that wanted the new tools are using the new tools, but we've gotten to the position where we want to make sure that those people that are kind of like, I don't really want to switch right now. How do we sell the tools to them and get their buy-in so that they understand that this is meaningful and it improves their work-life balance? The next challenge that we've had is the adoption of new process with more guardrails. So of course, as you deliver more tooling, more capabilities that are even offered by some of our great vendor partners back there, you have the ability to have more guardrails. And of course, my leadership wanted to ensure that, hey, we're using this new stuff. How do we make sure that individuals are using it in the right way? If you take away the ability for someone to, go and make a change on a production VM, right, and you take away the ability for them to do that, it's kind of like, okay, I don't have any power anymore. So we had to teach developers that this is the right way to go about managing your infrastructure as code and making changes in production. So that's another challenge that we faced. Our last challenge, and probably the most difficult, if you've gone through transformation, and Ross even mentioned it, is the cultural change. So making sure that individuals understood the new responsibilities. When you're talking about DevOps, it's no longer delivering code and forgetting about it. You're essentially responsible for that code, for the life of the code, which is definitely a new mindset that you have to create. So all of those challenges, right, that we had to think of a creative way to address those. And how do you do that? With the dojo. So we kicked off our dojo in 2018, as I mentioned, and one of the greatest things that started this was through partnership. So there's been a lot of talk this morning about community, and one of the great things about the DevOps community is that we love to share. So we actually worked with Target, Ford, Home Depot to learn how they were going through their transformations. And we took some of the aspects of each and formed it into a Delta dojo. We actually call it our Speed to Market dojo. And we've been going for about 2 years now. We've had about 50 teams come through. And we've evolved our program in many ways, but 4 things remain the same that we focus on. The first one is co-location and collaboration. And of all the challenges that I mentioned, we had to make sure that the entire team was there learning together and it was applicable to their day-to-day life. So that's one thing that we focused on. The next aspect of our dojo is a focused curriculum that targeted our Delta standards and industry standards. So it wasn't just what a team wanted to know. We wanted to make sure that there was a commonality across all the teams and there was a focused curriculum that they could use in their day-to-day. Next, we've also delivered on-demand coaching through subject matter experts. So not only were teams learning this base level curriculum, they got coaching as they were doing their day-to-day jobs. And lastly, we gave the teams the freedom to experiment. So since our transformation was pretty new from a DevOps perspective, we got the opportunity to really experiment with different sort of capabilities, different tooling, different automation processes. So these are all the things that we considered. So within the dojo, we've been able to see lots of growth with teams. So all of the challenges that I mentioned, tooling, practice, and cultural, we've been able to address through our dojo and been able to adapt quickly because teams are there in person and we're going with them on that journey, not just telling them how to do it. So over the years, our dojo program has evolved quite a bit. So in the past 2 years, we've been team focused, flexible duration, individual competency offerings, and enabling scaled teams. So talking about a full value stream. We bring the entire value stream instead of just individual teams. So the way we've kind of pivoted this year is through developer onboarding. So when you think about bringing a team into a dojo immersive experience, it's a great thing, right? But teams sometimes are not long-lived, right? You have teams that sometimes they'll say 6 months, a year, but usually some of those team members will go to other teams. So we've kind of pivoted and focused on developer onboarding. So as any new developer comes into Delta, they now experience what we called kind of like a birthday at Delta, where they get all of the basic tooling, all of the basic cultural learnings to understand how we work here at Delta. So that's one of the ways that we're kind of pivoting in 2020. We've also included AppSec education and practice. So in the past couple of years, application security has not been a focus, but we finally have the representation from the security side that will allow us to inject that into our curriculum offerings and make sure that it's at the forefront of developer experience. Lastly, security and pipelines. So we've been able to establish a common pipeline across Delta. It's not as widely as adopted as I would like, but we're getting there. And now we're even sprinkling in security within there. So we talk about OWASP dependency scanning and making sure that teams understand what's in their software as they deliver it. That's what we're focused on now. So with those additions, you could say that we are making the shift from DevOps all the way to DevSecOps. So the next part of my presentation will focus on how we're going to do that and what our plan is to continue to drive that maturation of the teams and make sure that security is at the forefront. So I love this saying, what would security do? So our security organization was really ramped up about 2 years ago with the joining of our CISO, Debbie Willer, in 2017. And she's been able to establish world-class security from an infrastructure standpoint and through education of the 90,000 employees at Delta. So now we're focused on application security. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through collaborating with her team. So this is a before picture that I have up here. And all of these individuals in the room represent our QA organization, our Agile organization, DevOps. But if you look, there's an empty chair. And that is where security usually is pictured. They're not in the room usually. So one of the ways that we're doing or including security is making sure that it's at the forefront of the conversation. So in our architecture review board meetings, I'm not sure how many of your companies do that, but security is now one of the first things that we talk about when you're thinking about developing a new technology and a new capability. How will this impact our security and make sure that we can protect our brand image at Delta? The next thing that we are doing from an AppSec perspective is establishing foundational security knowledge across the organization. So through the dojo and through other organizational learning capabilities, we've been able to establish a formal education plan to make sure that at least everybody understands the basics of security from an application perspective. So those are a couple of ways that we're doing that. There are still a couple of challenges that we have. So as I said, I'm also in charge of our application developer experience as it pertains to cloud. And cloud security is one of the things that we're challenged with right now in understanding how the cloud impacts our application security. So if you're in that space, please find me after. I would love to talk about ways that you're solving for that. And another thing that we're challenged with is creating a culture of security. So we've already made the first step towards creating a DevOps culture, but how do you take that one step further and add security on top of it? So just a couple of challenges that I'm throwing out there. All right, and this is just the call out to one of the fun ways that we're injecting security. So if you're thinking about making the step towards DevSecOps, this is one of the really successful things that we were able to do. We actually had our first hackathon late last year, and during that event, we were able to, in a fun way, include security so that individuals got pretty much a positive experience, right, with security the first time. If I had $1 for every time someone said, security, they said this or said that, and it's kind of in a negative connotation. We wanted to expose our security offerings and our security posture in a fun way. So a hackathon was a great way to do that. All right, so what's next for us from a DevSecOps perspective? So we talked about education, but next for us is open source governance. So one thing that we're looking to do in the next 6 months is establish some sort of governance model that allows our developers to not think about what they're utilizing within their software. We want to make it automated. We want to make it easy to adopt. And that's one thing that we're focused on with the security organization right now. Next, we're focusing on benchmarking our greenfield applications. So understanding all of our applications that are being newly developed, making sure that they are at a base level from a security standpoint from Delta's side. So if we have a new application that's being developed, making sure that at the most basic level that it's good to go from a security standpoint. Next, curriculum, alignment, and maturation. So making sure that we're going to the next level for application security, especially from a cloud perspective. So as we develop our LMS, our learning management system, and we continue to disseminate that information, how can we ensure that we're all continuously incorporating industry best practices into that curriculum? And lastly, which is in my team's purview specifically, is creating easy paths for pipeline adoption. So a lot of times when you introduce new things, it's sometimes difficult for everyone to utilize them. So by using Jenkins templating engine and other easy ways for teams to utilize it, we're creating easy paths for pipeline adoptions. So that way when a team is developing their application, they don't have to think about it. They put it in their pipeline and you're done, essentially. That is what's next. So that's really the gist of my presentation. I wanted to give a shout out to the sponsors. Thank you so much for creating the opportunity for us to share here at the DevSecOps community. And lastly, I would love to connect with you all to talk about some of those challenges, specifically in cloud, and also within the cultural, creating a culture of security is one of the real challenges that we have at Delta. So please add me on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter, but I can be reached on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you.
Mike, you got me? Good, thanks. We still have time for questions. If anybody heard something that they liked and want to ask a question, anybody going to run to the mic? Yes, I have somebody here.
Yeah, you spoke a little bit about taking care of converting all the legacy applications into the new model.
Yep.
However, like from my experience, what I've seen is there are 1 or 2 applications which are highly customized in legacy, which are practically impossible to convert, right? Have you encountered any such? If so, like how do you deal with that process-wise? You leave it as is or like you build a bridge?
Right. So we've established an application modernization program that does just that. It takes a look at applications and it gets an understanding of is it worth investing the time to re-architect it into microservices and put it into the cloud, or do we just lift and shift it? So there's definitely opportunities for both. I think from a breakdown perspective, only about 7% of our applications are just pretty much as is, right? And we're going to work on rewriting them into microservices. So that's what we're doing. So they kind of get lifted and shifted to new infrastructure, but with the intent of rewriting it into a microservice and breaking it up. Yeah.
Good. Did you get something for your notes? I hope you were taking notes. Got something? Good.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, as always. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to go over to our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon. Charlene has today's news headlines around the media ops community, as well as a great preview of this week's webinars and an interview with Zach Zilakakis. I almost said Zach, well, the actor from The Hangover. It's not him, though. Anyway, Zach's with Apstra, and he's going to talk about how digital transformation efforts and organizations are working out during the pandemic. So here now, Charlene O'Hanlon.
Cycle to have the greatest impact on process. Just like continuous testing has embedded testers with development teams to ensure applications are built better from the start, so too should SREs be integrated into an organization's overarching agile framework. This process will produce better results across the entire service delivery continuum, according to the article. Also on DevOps.com is an article discussing how remote teams can still work effectively even while remote. We've seen over the last 6 months or so that productivity can remain high no matter where employees are located. DevOps and Agile practices are just as critical during the time of remote work, and teams need to be able to have access to the tools that enable them to continue to do their job. For DBAs, that means a robust remote monitoring technology that can help them monitor both cloud and on-prem servers, and as well as manage servers for non-production servers for UAT and staging. Not to mention managing access to information developers, to information that developers need to refine their applications, and more. Monitoring can be just as effective when done remotely, and it's just as important. We also have news from newcomer Opsera, which is now offering a platform that enables IT teams to orchestrate the tools employed by developers as well as the pipelines that make up a DevOps process. The Opsera platform automates the setup of DevOps pipelines using a declarative approach that doesn't require DevOps teams to standardize on a specific set of tools. It also acts as a repository for reusable pipelines. The need for greater automation in DevOps processes is apparent given the need to keep up with the increasing complexity of IT environments. And as DevOps processes become even more automated, developers should be able to develop applications faster. Over on Container Journal, we have an article that discusses whether Kubernetes is the right technology for certain organizations. It's pretty well known that Kubernetes is a complex animal, and while it may provide certain benefits for companies in certain development environments, it's really not for everyone. There are a number of things to consider, and this article offers up 5 questions organizations should ask before deciding to make the move to a Kubernetes environment. This article is a must for any organization that's considering a move to Kubernetes but doesn't quite have that concrete why yet. For those using Heroku and are looking to move up to Kubernetes to meet their growing application needs, we have an article offering tips to help organizations on their migration journey. It's not a simple lift and shift. If you're used to having a very structured, opinionated infrastructure, the total freedom that Kubernetes brings environments can be overwhelming. Kubernetes is the foundation organizations will use to build their platform, and so there are certain design considerations that they should examine before getting underway. So this article examines some of those potential issues and offers up some considerations when making the decision to upsize from Heroku to Kubernetes. Over on Security Boulevard, we take a look at the pros and cons of the IoT Cybersecurity Improvement Act of 2020, which recently was passed by the House of Representatives. The bill requires that all IoT devices purchased by the government meet minimum security standards. That's a good.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with Zach Zilakakis, who is the Technical Evangelist at Apstra and your former Gartner analyst as well, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Great. So let's talk about digital transformation because nobody's talking about digital transformation.
Exactly. I don't think we've heard that term before, right? It's
one of those esoteric terms that people aren't using. No, but really what I want to talk to you about is, I guess you guys came out with a survey or a report or something recently that talks about digital transformation and how easily it could get derailed during times of COVID. And, you guys have some ideas for companies to help them prevent their digital transformation efforts from getting, as you say, swallowed by the pandemic. So let's talk a little bit about the background first. I mean, what do you guys, how did you guys come about with this information?
Yeah, so speaking with a lot of our customers and potential customers, just trying to dig through what's really going on and where are we seeing slowdowns or where are these digital transformation initiatives dying on the vine or some accelerating and what's really driving that. And one of the things we find is a lot of this now at the beginning of COVID is really being driven by business transformation. So we're seeing really a pull through from business transformation initiatives. And so a lot of these organizations are not a lot, some are having to adapt to that. So that business transformation, the business driving a lot of this unique times that we're in. And so in my opinion, I think this is good news for us. As businesses transform, it's much more disruptive. But it's an opportunity for digital transformation to go ahead and align with the business, understanding how they're transforming, what they're looking to transform, and how we can support that from a technology perspective. Because at the end of the day, it's really digital transformation is there to support the business transformation. So in my opinion, I think this is all good news if we can effectively align to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, I have talked to a lot of companies since the pandemic began and talked digital transformation a lot. And it seems like the majority of companies understand that there is a need now, that it's, obviously no longer a nice to have, it's a must have for just for survival for a lot of companies. But it also kind of seems like a lot of the transformations were kind of done just like last minute, not really a lot of thought put into the process, or maybe initiatives that they had maybe started a couple of years ago and put on the back burner. All of a sudden they charged them up, and perhaps maybe some things have changed along the way and they didn't really take some of those things into account. So what are some of the things that you guys have seen related to easy for me to say, digital transformation efforts or business transformation efforts that maybe didn't work out as planned?
That's great that you said that. So the failure rate for digital transformation is as high as 84%. So it implies about a 16% success rate. And I think a lot of this is, you touched on it. People think that we can just do this overnight. This just happens right away. It's not what you're trying to solve, but it's how you're trying to solve it. So, everybody says, well, you can't tell your customer to transform overnight. You can't go and say, okay, you got to transform overnight. Well, we've done in 3 months. Now that's the wrong approach. 80% of their architecture is legacy. A lot of their applications, when you think about it, 20, 40 years, these applications, these legacy apps have been running, 15, 20 years, these legacy apps have been running in their environment. They're still mission critical. You can't transform those overnight. So, how do you connect the legacy with the new world is really the right question I think we need to ask ourselves on a lot of this. I think, in our opinion, some of the things that they're looking to get out of this, how do I move, faster? So speed, have greater agility, secure what matters most, leverage the insights of this data that they have as well. And I think this aligns to enterprise DevOps, hybrid IT, security, risk, and governance, and the fourth is predictive analytics. And so we if we look at those 4 pillars and how they align with what I just what I was talking about, and then how do we keep this legacy world still there because it's still critical to the business, I think we have a better chance of finding success. Again, not just trying to solve things, but how are we going to do this, and really just planning it out. And you brought up a great point. This doesn't happen overnight or in 3 months or in 6 months. But it happens in phases. But there's a lot of planning that has to go into this. So that's what we're seeing. There's this perception, I guess, from a lot of organizations that, hey, I just roll everything into the cloud, or I just do all this overnight, and we're missing out on how are we getting there and what it takes.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies thought, digital transformation equals cloud. We'll just throw everything up in the cloud and, hey, we're digitally transformed. We got no problems whatsoever. And then they quickly realized that it's so much more than just utilizing cloud services or shifting some of their workloads into the cloud, that it really has as much to do with the on-premises infrastructure as well, and the way folks actually go about doing their job every single day. I mean, they've got to kind of pivot also and recognize that digital transformation equals moving faster, and so that means streamlining processes and methodology. So what I've seen has been a lot more along the lines of mistakes that organizations have made in assuming that just by clicking a switch or pushing a button and moving workloads that they've already been transformed.
I couldn't agree more. I like to say cloud is a symptom of IT not doing it right. And that's really, to me, is what it is. And I think you touched on that. It's an operational challenge for a lot of organizations. The 2 words that I like to really bring up to customers is abstraction and cloud. I mean, cloud is abstraction. And so how do we abstract some of these layers? And you're right. A lot of people think, or some organizations, I should say, think we just throw it in the cloud. And I think you'll see a lot of that 84% of the failure comes from that. It's just not that simple. Just say we're going to throw things in the cloud. And then, operations. One of the things that we started talking about in August here at Apstra is the day zero operations. Operations start at day zero. I personally feel a big advocate of operations, by the way. I feel like it's often forgotten about, and a lot of organizations or a lot of vendors like to talk about day two ops, and I think we missed the boat. At that point, it's too late. So when it comes to any initiative, cloud initiative, what we're revamping on-prem, and I think that's the other thing is, cloud on-prem, which I chuckle at, to be honest. The whole cloud on-prem notion to me is kind of funny because it's on-prem, but they still want to call it cloud. I just think it's an operational model that they're bringing on-prem, and but it comes back to operations. It is, in my opinion, center and just the core of what anybody's going to try to do, and for success. And some customers, they've been fed a lot of PowerPoint transformation, I think, in the last couple of years, and so. When this pandemic, really, hit their business, it was 6-7 months ago. I think they, push came to shove, and unfortunately, a lot of the vendors that were touting PowerPoint transformation, as I call it, it sounded good. It was beautiful on a PowerPoint slide, but trying to deliver that or go to market is a different thing. So I think, again, it goes back to how you're going to do it, thinking through it. And you're right. I mean, we're hearing the same thing from from a lot of our clients. And again, and the other thing too is, I said earlier, business transformation, we have to remember that is driving digital transformation, and there are two totally different things. We're even seeing a shift in technology. I think for the first time ever, I'm starting to see businesses that non-IT, non-technology businesses acquiring technology companies. So if we think, just let that sink in and think about that. What are we seeing in the industry? That's a powerful, powerful thing. So technology is definitely central to what these businesses are doing. I think there's one term, as an analyst at Gartner, this term of shadow IT. To me, that term is also no longer valid. There is no shadow IT. They've come out of the shadows, so we need to understand how we can, how are we going to support them in these initiatives and work with them. And then you have this whole, no code, low code movement. How does that impact us? Again, I go back to just operations. Just DevOps is a part of, that move faster and quicker, and it's a central part of that.
Yeah, well, you definitely hit the hot buttons there. One thing I did want to mention is, your point that non-IT companies are now buying technology companies. I think that pretty much just cements the fact that so many organizations now, and everybody said it, everybody's an IT company now. Everybody's a software company that just happens to sell cars or build cars or make music or sell groceries or something like that. But, at the end of the day, what they are is a software company. And so I think the fact that a lot of those organizations are buying tech companies is just kind of advances that notion. Your point about low code, no code we are seeing low code exploding on the sites, and DevOps.com especially, and so many organizations are adopting that. In fact, we even have a virtual summit coming up in December on low code technologies. I'll have to double check that, but check the website and see when the low code summit is coming. But lots and lots of great information on that. But so many companies are adopting low code technologies just to kind of bridge the gap, because there's so many things happening, and it's just all coming at them so fast that people don't have time to wait for the IT department now to be able to do what they want and get the job done. And shadow IT, actually, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because I have heard that shadow IT actually has been one of the major drivers or drivers of derailing IT digital transformation efforts, because there's just too much that's happening on the fringes that organizations don't know about until it's almost too late as they're doing their mapping and they're planning for digital transformation. They have to kind of take a step back and really get a grasp on what their employees are using, and to your point, bring shadow IT out of the shadows.
Yes, that's another interesting topic that we can dive a little bit into. A lot of technology vendors are not even selling into IT. They're selling directly to the business, and especially a lot of these low codes. And so that's when I was talking about, business transformation is really driving a lot of this. is driving digital transformation, it's imperative to align with the business. I mean, it has to happen early on. They have to be engaged in these meetings. No longer is it IT just, working in a vacuum. And I'm not saying that's the case, but in a lot of organizations, I find that it is the case. So they, I talk about a technology, whether it's, network infrastructure all the way up to the application. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then there's this disconnect, and you find out that the business is deploying their own maybe visibility tools that they might have, or whatever it might be, or cloud initiative that may or may not work. And so I think that it is important. I'll go back to what I said earlier: business transformation is delivering innovation, and digital transformation has to support that innovation. It's not to say that it's not important. It is, and I think they can show some of the value they're adding. So I agree with what you said there completely. And the business, and this could be anything from RPA to low code, no code. I mean, this citizen developer movement is huge. It is big. And COVID has done nothing but accelerate what we were expecting to see in 12 to 18 months. We're seeing in 6 to 12 months, this whole movement. And there's some people who say, well, you can't do everything with no code or low code. There's a lot of gaps. And there are some things we have to work through. On no code, backend as a service, that's going to come along. We're going to hear more and more about BaaS, backend as a service, over the next 12, 18 months. But that runtime abstraction is important. And once they get there, then it's really going to accelerate. But I want to say one thing. 2018, there was a CFO, there was a yearly global CFO council meeting. I think it was 2018. The biggest threat to their business at that time was not capital. It wasn't, financial. It was software development. And I remember at that time making a comment that, I don't think they're going to try to solve this by just, hiring they you couldn't find them. They're just, they're hard to find, software developers. And I don't think the goal was, hey, we're going to try to, steal from this company, or we're going to try to train a lot of these. I kind of saw it then. I think a lot of us did in the industry. Hey, they're going to look to this no code, low code. They're going to really try to ramp this up. And now we're starting to see some of that follow through. But, IT has a place. They have an important place. And you said it earlier, instead of being a disabler, for years, the businesses, unfortunately, has heard a lot of, no, we can't do that for whatever reason, as opposed to, yes, we can do that and we'll support you. And it just comes down to having that conversation with the business and aligning. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of organizations in their digital transformation efforts, I think it's also very important that, especially the C-suite, they recognize that this is not only important for the survival of the company, but also for the health of the workers. I mean, we're working, the companies that are doing really, really well, and I imagine a large number of companies that aren't doing as well. We're working harder than we have ever, I think. And digital transformation is going to help employees do their jobs better and faster. And that could mean the difference between a 14-hour workday and an 8-hour workday. And so I think looking at the human value of digital transformation is also very, very important when we're talking about whether organizations can kind of make that jump and really get that buy-in from the C-suite.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's this whole notion of, automation, which is a big pillar of everything we're talking about. You're absolutely right. It is imperative. And then there's this notion of, well, if we automate this, what am I going to do? But that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's, how are we going to align our resources? And there are a lot of things that you cannot automate or you can't leverage AI for. There's human reasoning. And so we forget about that often. There's this human reasoning aspect. If I ask Siri, what is my relationship with you? Are we friends? Siri's not going to know that answer. It's not going to be able to reason that with that. So I just say that because there's this whole other side of, everybody's worried about AI or automation. We still need this human reasoning, and we still need these people, and they need to understand the business. I believe we're touching on it. They, not only fewer hours, but more strategic. How can I become more strategic to the business? Right. And that's imperative. And these businesses, and I'm glad you're seeing the same thing, that are looking at technology companies and acquiring these technology companies, they need these resources. I mean, they're still very, very valuable to the business. It's just how do we leverage these teams? And a lot of organizations that we're finding as well, I mean, they're struggling with, revamping the people they have. They want to keep the people they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do we leverage that? I think it's an exciting time in the industry. I think I would love to be able to learn more about the business, or dive a little bit deeper outside of my current area and do what I enjoy a little bit more maybe than what I do today, I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of stuff happening, and Zach, I know we could have this conversation all day long. I get the feeling we could spend hours talking about this, but unfortunately, we don't have that much time. So, I would like to invite you back to have another conversation about this, maybe in a couple months when we are maybe 9 months into COVID, and see where we are in digital transformation and just kind of life in general. How's that sound?
I would love to come back. Thank
Great.
you. And I've had a good time here today. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Well, thanks for coming. I do appreciate it. So. All right, everybody, please stick around. We have lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I am here now with the Monday edition of the Webinars Preview. As always, we have a lot of webinars coming up on our sites, DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard, as well as a lot of webinars that we have on demand. But I wanted to let you know about the 3 of them that are happening this week in the hopes that we can get you guys involved. The first webinar is called Microservices at Scale: How to Reduce Overhead and Increase Developer Productivity, even with hundreds of services. This webinar is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, October 20th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and it's sponsored by Garden.io. As we all know, microservices have been a boon to development in many ways, but often the overhead that's associated with them can be very, very complex for developers to handle. Over time, the application becomes too complex to manage effectively, and the reality of building, deploying, and testing a 100+ service distributed application means a lot of time just spent waiting around. This webinar looks at ways to stream the ways developers interact with these applications to reduce complexity and free more time for them. The second one I want to let you know about is called The Future of Active Host Vulnerability Monitoring. This one is happening Wednesday, October 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. This one is sponsored by Lacework. So we're talking about cloud services. We're in the cloud generation, and the constant activity around workloads and containers are creating more vulnerabilities than an organization can honestly keep up with. So this webinar takes a look at how organizations can streamline their host and container vulnerability workflows for their software teams building in AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and Kubernetes. So if you are handling many workloads on the cloud and you're struggling with securing those workloads, please give this webinar a check out, because I'm sure there'll be some good takeaways for you there. The third and final webinar I want to let you know about is happening also on Wednesday, October 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It's called DevOps from a Different Data Set: What 30 Million Workflows Reveal About High-Performing Teams. This one is sponsored by Circle CI. This webinar offers a view into anonymized team data from millions of DevOps workflows to offer some insights, behaviors, and metrics that can help teams build software faster, and better, and look into characteristics of success that we can measure through data. It also covers what can be inferred from team behavior and provides some takeaways for companies to benchmark the performance of their software delivery teams. This one is going to be especially interesting, I think, because we're talking about metrics, and metrics are always good for software delivery and building a better end product. All right, that's all we have for the webinars today. Please check back tomorrow when I'll have a fresh new batch of webinars to tell you about. Until then, have a great day and stay safe.
Thanks, Charlene. Great stuff. Next, we're over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. Mitchell, take it away.
Hi, and welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO with Accelerated Strategies Group. We've been having quite a few conversations in different venues here between accelerated strategies and things that are happening on TechStrong TV around the role of the CISO. And so look forward to some really good content coming up on CISO Talk about that. I think you'll really find that interesting and some new ideas coming out of that. There's also an article I want to point you to on Security Boulevard. The title is COVID-19 Gives Rise to Next Gen CISOs. It's by Sue Paremba, and she writes about how, in one way, and I would say I would describe it as one dimension, in which CISOs are being pushed very rapidly into new areas of the business, new things that the business is doing, whether that's the rapid shift to more digital transformation, digital strategies and projects, to the work at home, to really figuring out, how are we going to structure the company to support a diverse workforce in terms of location and working style, as well as, how those people are going to work and what tools they're going to use. And is this a more rapid shift to the cloud? Is this a change in strategy or simply an acceleration? And then how do we manage the risk around all of that? And I guess that's where this leads me to, is really the CISO's role in understanding the business and thinking in business terms. Because now the CISO more and more has to talk with the board members as well as the executive team. They may be at the C level, they may be reporting to the C level. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was advocating for CISOs not reporting to the CIO. I think there's a direct conflict of interest. Matter of fact, I think there's an extreme conflict of interest. So imagine what a CISO is going to be reporting on. They're going to be talking about breaches and vulnerabilities and security issues and improvements with what? Probably the infrastructure, the applications, the cloud, internal, wherever that may be, that falls under the purview of the CIO. And if that's your boss, guess what happens when you present an issue? That's going to go through that filter. And sometimes, there's a collaborative filter, which is good to do. But if it's going to shine a negative light on something, I think it's just human nature that you're going to want to understand it, be prepared for it, maybe massage it, or in some cases, go as far as sweep it under the rug, inappropriately, of course, and that's just not appropriate. So I think CISOs need their own independence and their own support, whether they're working with general counsel from the organization, their relationship with the CEO, for what ultimately are making decisions that affect the business and multiple parts of the business. So I know that's probably not the case in many organizations where a technical person has risen up through those ranks and is at the C level, truly working at that level. But one of those may be also their business skills. So at a certain point in your career, as you move up the ladder, you're adding not only your specialty of work, whether it's in sales or marketing or IT or security or manufacturing or whatever it might be, but you are being asked, and your role is to look across the business, not just operate optimally for what's appropriate for your organization. Many, if not almost all, decisions are really about what the best answer to challenges or to strategies or whatever it might be for the overall business. It might actually not be a great result for you and your organization. Maybe you're going to take a hit on budget. Maybe some projects you think are super important for other reasons are getting delayed. But that's part of operating at that C level. And I think that progression is a challenge for all of us, but especially if you're coming out of a technical role, it's not always logic or being able to advocate even more strongly for your role, your group, your function, whatever it is. It's understanding how this operates in the context of the full business, whether there's legal implications, the financial costs, the balancing of where you make investments. And not just from the CFO's perspective, but also, the product organization, the marketing organization, the CEO, everyone. And you're going to be interfacing with the board more than likely in a CISO kind of role. So, while there aren't necessarily great resources to easily tap into to tell you all the things that you need to know, I think the CISO community has an opportunity to work with each other and maybe start to fill in some of those gaps. And those are some of the ideas that we've explored. I'll announce this when we get to having this content on TechStrong TV. It's not too far away, but I'm excited to bring that. In the meantime, check out this COVID-19 Gives Rise to Next Gen CISOs article by Sue on securityboulevard.com. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, I'm joined by Larry Cashdollar, who is a senior security researcher with Akamai. Larry and I have talked, I think, maybe once or twice before, but first time having him on TechStrong TV. Larry, it's great to be talking with you.
Yeah, it's good to be talking to you too.
Appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're very busy in the line of work that you do. Tell us a little bit about what you do as a security researcher, and we're going to go into some of the kind of history of that and touch on what Akamai does. So if somebody out there in the world doesn't know Akamai knows, you'll find out a little bit.
Sure. So I'm a security researcher at Akamai, and my day-to-day job is looking for threats on the internet, tracking attacks, threat actors. I also find vulnerabilities in software, try and get those patched. Generally, we refer to ourselves as like a mall cop for the internet. We sort of for different attacks that might be targeting our customers or the internet as a whole. Akamai is a content delivery network where we make websites faster by caching their content globally across the world. And, my team is there to sort of protect our company's customers, but also the internet as its entire, entity as itself. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know the stat. I've heard it in the past. What percentage of internet traffic passes through Akamai as a content?
Yeah, I've heard different stats, and I won't even repeat them because I'm not sure what the accurate number is. So I won't even say.
It's a lot. Let's just say it's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you're a unique individual in a unique kind of role. Most of us are not doing security vulnerability research, security research like you do. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into doing this kind of work?
So I was studying computer science at the University of Southern Maine in Portland, Maine. And I ended up getting a job as an internet analyst at a small consulting company. This consulting company, they did security. They did penetration testing. They built custom firewalls for companies in the New England area, mostly Maine, mostly targeted small to medium-sized companies. We had one larger company that was out of New York. It was a bank, actually, that was also a customer of ours. But that was where I started my journey in information tech security back in, this was 1994, I believe, is when I started. And that's where, I sort of started to understand, security, and then the ideas of vulnerabilities and hacking and the whole, information security field. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow, things have changed. I mean, I got started myself in around, I guess, 98, something like that. So my how it's changed. So you're in even a lot of than I was. Well, I know you're very, actually as a researcher, you're very involved in, finding vulnerabilities, reporting them, through CVEs, through that process. Yeah. So you were around with the creation of that, right? That might have created the CVE process and the database and how that all worked initially and kind of how it's grown up to be where it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that started in '99, and I discovered my first CVE in 1999. But back then, when you found a vulnerability, you pretty much just dumped it on BugTrack. At least that's what I did. If I found a security hole in something, I would write up an advisory in an email with a proof of concept of how to exploit it, and then just email it out to BugTrack. And that was sort of like a place where other researchers, administrators, technical people would sort of vet what you found and confirm it and say, yeah, as a matter of fact, this guy's right. If you do this on this system with this, you'll end up doing, escalate your privileges or whatever what you were trying to do. So it was sort of like a place where you could get confirmation and validation on what you've discovered, and then also spread it to the world of people who were interested in tracking this stuff so that, they knew about it themselves. So, yeah.
I mean, in that time period when I got into security was something only a select few people really did as a full-time job. Yeah. And during the early 2000s is when, Code Red and I Love You virus and all those things really took form. And that in part was the reason why security spread to be so many other people getting into network security. Doesn't mean they were doing research like yourself. What was that? Yeah. What was that time period of 2000, 2010? Let's say a lot of things changed. A lot of things happened very quickly in that era. What's your observation about that?
Yeah, it's sort of in I'd say 2000, 1999, that sort of area. It seemed like the target shifted from attacking the web server to attacking, and not just attacking the web server, but attacking the applications that serve web content. The web server itself, the Apache HTTP daemon, Telnet or SSH, FTP, things like that, SendMail, the mail protocol. It was, at that time, it was, your objective was to attack the server, get a shell on it, get root on it, and then wipe the logs. That was your goal. And after the web sort of exploded, you have all these web apps now. So rather than hack into, say, the Apache HTTP daemon, you'd hack into the application that the HTTP daemon is running and get a web shell on it. And then not even bother wiping the logs, using that server to host, your phishing site, or running a cryptocurrency miner that's more modern. But, that's the things I see today is in not just finding a vulnerability in something, but looking for weak credentials. There's a lot of weak credential attacks where, there's botnets that automate brute force logins into, say, WordPress or other content management systems. And once they log in, they upload a plugin or some sort of extension, and that is a web shell. And then they either use your site for SEO bombing, or they're loading another website onto your website and using that to run a store unbeknownst to you, or they're mining cryptocurrency or doing other nefarious things, running a spam mail relay. I've seen that done on one of my honeypots, which was really neat. So there's the dynamic has changed. They don't bother really wiping the logs anymore. They just want to take advantage of your system's resources, the processing power and the bandwidth and the memory. And they don't really care if you see where they're logged in from, because it's most likely another compromised system somewhere else. So it's a little more layered now.
Would it also be true to say you're going from one attack to primarily one server to, doesn't matter if you notice or alerted that a server's been compromised, or a device, because you've already compromised many, many others. So it's sort of the school of fish principle, right? Right. You can find out where I am, but there's a lot more fish than what I've already compromised.
Yeah, a lot of it's automated now. So it's, back then, I remember running a system. It was a server that I was running, a web server, a test server in a lab. And I had gotten an email to it where there was somebody who was using it to bounce mail off of. They were trying to use it as a mail relay. And the emails that they were sent were trying to relay through it were like taunting another systems administrator. And I sent an email to the machine that I was getting these emails from. And I said, I think someone is trying to use your system as a relay to taunt another company or person. And the person responded back, and it was actually somebody had hacked into that server. And he's like, "Geez, like you're on top of your logs. You've already seen me. I've hacked this system, and I'm going to be gone in a minute. But I've been trying to use it as a mail relay to, annoy some other guy, and we'll be gone in a minute. Thanks for noticing. Have a nice day." And I was like, "Wow, this person had logged into the system and was using it to try and relay mail, and they were using my system to try to see if I could relay mail off of it." And I actually caught this hacker in the act. So it was different then. It was an actual person that was actually had attacked the system, gotten access to it, and was still on the system when I notified the system administrator about it, and actually, ended up making contact with the actual attacker instead. These days, it's, if you watch logs on like a honeypot, you'll see where they'll come into a telnet session, they'll type login root and then password, and then it'll say login credentials invalid, and then it'll say curl HTTP 192.168 blah 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 /bin/arm.i86, and then it will say invalid login, and it will say ./arm i86 whatever, and it'll say invalid login, because they're not even it's a bot that's not even paying attention to the output of what it's seeing, that it doesn't even know that it hasn't even logged into the system. It's just throwing a bunch of stuff out there and seeing what sticks. So and it's automated, and there's so many targets now on the internet that it's going to stick somewhere. So that's how it is now.
Very interesting. Well, talk to us about what are some of the unique things that make someone interested in and good at being a security researcher? How do you have to think or view the world differently than others, or do you? Is it anybody could?
I think anybody can do it. They just have to think how they can misuse something, or if a software is expecting a certain type of input from a user, what other input can you stick in there, and how will it behave? How is that input being treated? If you have an application that's expecting input from a user, and that application, say, is getting pulling content down over an HTTP session, how is it pulling that content down? Is it dropping it out to a shell session and using curl? Is it using an API or a library to access an HTTP library to pull it down that way? So you might wonder if I stick in, my file name and then a semicolon on the end and an ID command and another semicolon, could I get command injection? So it's sort of like you have to think like a developer and an attacker. What is the developer expecting? And does the developer not expect this from an attacker or a user? And, it's sort of like, how is this expected to be used? And then how can I break it? So, and as a kid, I liked breaking a lot of stuff. If you ask my parents, I broke my uncle's, he had a TV set that he built from an electronics kit. I broke that because I was playing with the pots on it. I had a little screwdriver and I was playing with the pots and changed the resistance on a bunch of the circuits, which I went through and showed him which ones that I had changed, and he fixed it, which he was terrified that he wouldn't be able to figure it out. Broke a sewing machine, my mom's Mickey Mouse watch. I broke a lot of stuff. And I took a lot of things apart, a lot of things. In New York City in the 1980s, you could walk up and down the street and somebody would have tossed out a boombox or a tape cassette player or a car stereo. So I would take these things home, take them apart, take the pieces like the motors and the gears and, make a small balsa wood car and put a battery in it and have a motor, and it would zip across the floor. That was the sort of things I did when I was, 9, 10, 11 years old. And then my first love was biology. I liked microscopes and things like that and slides. And then my father was a computer enthusiast back then, but I wasn't really allowed to touch his computers that much. So one day he told me, "Hey, Larry, there's somebody selling a Commodore VIC-20 for $50 at work. Would you rather me get that than a microscope?" And I'm like, "Yeah, get me the Commodore VIC-20." So he bought me the Commodore VIC-20 and I started programming BASIC on it. And I think I was maybe 10 years old. And that's where my computer career started. This was probably 1985 or so. So I programmed the Commodore VIC-20, save the programs to the tape cassette, write little games, and flash the screen different colors and things like that, and then started took some computer science classes in high school, and then went to school for computer science, and that's where I sort of fell in love with computers. So
it's amazing from that area between Commodore platform, Apple II, Radio Shack TRS-80.
Yeah.
How many people got their start?
Yeah,
literally on those platforms. It's pretty amazing when you think about it today. Well, so let's fast forward to nowadays. I'm curious, what insights can you share with us about how attacks have changed or morphed in the remote work, COVID, tough economic times, whatever the drivers might be? What are you seeing that's changed, or are you seeing some trends?
I think some of the simplest attacks can be the most powerful. Take example, spear phishing. It's a very simple attack. You figure out who your target is at a company that might control some sort of asset that you're interested in gaining access to, and then you send them a nicely crafted email, in order to try and get them to either click a link or divulge some sort of credentials to you or download some sort of software. And it's a very simple attack, but it's very, very effective. And now I think in this day and age, a lot of control panels that, things that are being controlled out there, like control panels for, say, certain media, social media types, like LinkedIn or Twitter, those are likely being controlled over a web-based control panel. So if you can manage to get someone to click a link and somehow divulge the credentials to that control panel, you can get access to, the control panel for a major social media company. We've seen this happen with Twitter and where we had prestigious accounts tweeting out addresses for Bitcoin to double their Bitcoin and things like that. So it's I think these sort of web-based attacks and simple attacks are becoming, they're simple, but they're very, very powerful. So
I was reading about something kind of like that. You mentioned automated earlier. It was an attack where it was phishing attack, get someone to click a link. And what they would do then is, instead of doing a bunch of things on your computer, they would just reply to your emails to other people that you'd received and include in that a link that looked like something that you could click on. And it was all automated, so it just immediately explode. And suddenly IT groups are getting call after call of what's this, what's going on. Pretty interesting kind of an attack, I thought.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I hadn't heard of that one yet, but yeah.
I just read about this morning. I don't know the CVE number. Wow, I can't believe I know something you didn't know about yet. That was the blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while. So, well, Larry, October is Security Awareness Month.
Yeah.
What's that mean? What do we do to help with awareness, and what do we want to achieve with our security awareness programs in October?
I think people should, think about the simple stuff, having complex passwords, multi-factor authentication, things like that, like keeping yourself, your personal information secure, and not just your work and company information, but your own personal information, giving everybody a chance to, realize how their assets are what's the word I'm looking for? Are valuable. You need to have, two-factor authentication on stuff or multi-factor. And for certain aspects of things, like depending on the level of security you want, you may want to deviate from like SMS messaging to actual like application multi-factor authentication, where you have an app on your phone, like dual security and things like that. That's, or even password management applications like 1Password and stuff. That's something people should be thinking about this month. So
I think those are two excellent recommendations. You think about how many more SaaS or online applications we might be using now, general users be using today since they're working remotely. And between that and turning on two-factor, and it's not a panacea for everything, right? I mean, everything can get broken at some point, broken into. But those two things, getting away from reusing the same password and generating passwords with a password manager and keeping it secure out of a spreadsheet or a written pad. sort of like wearing masks for COVID-19. That will solve a lot of our problems, right?
Right.
Well, cool. What cool things are you looking at working on next, or what are you working on right now?
I've pretty much I've built a bunch of honeypots, custom honeypots. I was using stuff like Cowrie and different honeypots like that. And I realized rather than have a honeypot, I should just let things get compromised that are actual Docker images. So what I did was I spun up a bunch of Docker images on a separate network. I run a lab out of my home, which is kind of behind me. And, I have this segregated network where I have a system that's running all of these virtual machines, and these virtual machines have Docker images on them that are just your normal Docker images that you get from, Docker. And then I've modified some pieces of software on that. Like, for example, I have an SSH daemon that I've modified to write all of the console logs to a file. So when somebody logs in, I can literally watch them type commands, which it's never really anybody live typing it. It's always some automated bot. But I can at least see what they're trying to do on the system while they're doing it and not have to look through logs. And I've observed a lot of crypto mining stuff that way. I've seen, as I mentioned before, I saw a spam relay that was being, the machine was being used as an actual email relay where they were using the SSH daemon as a proxy to proxy mail through it. I saw someone who had installed bandwidth checking malware, which I thought was kind of odd. This thing, all it did was collect information about ping times and bandwidth speeds between various networks from the machine it had hacked into. So I'm not sure if somebody was building sort of a DDoS map of the regions or machines that had the most bandwidth to use in a DDoS attack. I wasn't sure what they were building from it. The malware was installed, it collected some data, and then nobody came and picked the data up. So it was, I don't know, it was kind of odd. And then I have the actual, on that same system, I modified the password file, or not, I'm sorry, the password command, so that if somebody changes the password, it logs the password they change it to. Because I was getting connections at one point where someone would log into the system, they would log in by guessing my login for the machine was root and password, and then they would change the password to something. So I wanted to know what they changed it to. So I made modifications like that. So, so yeah.
What a great way to kind of see what's happening, right? It's a kind of your ear to the ground to see what's new. When you're doing that, what kind of thing piques your interest to say that's something I want to go look further into? What's an example of some things? I watch more time on it. I watch a lot of network traffic to some addresses on my network that I've never hosted anything on. Like they're darknet pretty much. They've never had a server on them or any service. So when I start seeing, connections or SYN packets for, port 8081, I start to wonder, okay, what service is that normally? And why am I suddenly getting scans for it? And that makes me wonder if there's some service that normally listens on that port that most likely has a new either 0-day or a new vulnerability that's been discovered in it that someone is now using to build a botnet with and exploit. So that will make me spin up, an HTTP server on port, say 8081, and then see what sort of traffic I'm getting there. And that's sort of how I'll change my focus on what I'm looking for attacks. So something out of the ordinary, which then you might normally see. But super interesting.
Yeah.
I know you blog with Akamai. Is there an easy way to get to your blog?
Yeah. I mean, there's a site, it's blogs.akamai.com, and I think you can navigate to the CERT blogs from there. There's a security blog area that I think we're under. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. Well, I'm sure you probably know Martin McKay. Martin and I used to work together way back when. My hellos. If you talk to him soon, I'm sure I'll touch base
Martin's
with him
great.
again. Yeah, he's a great guy. We love Martin. Well, thanks for spending time with us, and your time's extremely valuable. You're doing important work, and we appreciate it.
Sure.
And thanks for sharing. And appreciate your dad getting you that Commodore.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime. So
I'd love to do that. If you something interesting comes up, be sure and reach out to us. Happy to have you back on. Okay, Larry?
Sure.
All right. Thanks. Thank you much. Larry Cashdollar, senior security researcher with Akamai. Thanks for joining me, Larry.
Sure.
Okay, we've got Mike Vizard Squared today, doubled up. Up next, Mike has two interviews, one with Red Hat, Jeff Jameson, about new customer advocacy program there, and one with AWS's Kevin Kelly, Director of Education Programs for AWS Training, about the latest on that front. I hope you'll enjoy it, and take it away, Mike.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks from the studio. We're here today with Jeff Jameson, who is the Senior Manager for Portfolio and Custom Engagement Programs at Red Hat. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey Mike, thanks for having me.
You guys just launched this customer advocacy program. So what does that mean, and how is that different than the way things were before you launched the program?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, we've basically formalized a way for us to find, engage, and convert some of our most passionate enterprise customers into advocates, both internal and external advocates. And the idea is for us to be able to create a mutually beneficial relationship with our customers, deepen our relationship with our customers, and basically give our enterprise customers a voice for their critical feedback from how they're using and leveraging our solutions and tools.
So how are they going to become advocates? Are they going to be advocates for other customers with Red Hat, or are they going to be advocates among their own community, or what is the job exactly?
So it's interesting. So, Red Hat has a long history in building open source communities. And we've been doing this for, we're going on 3 decades now at Red Hat. And a lot of that history, or all of that history, in fact, has been focused on open source project communities. So that is all about getting contributors to contribute code to the projects upstream. And that helps us drive new innovations in the products, helps us find a direction for what our customers need by contributors, and then that filters down to our enterprise products. However, if you look at some of our enterprise customers, our users, and we're focused this program on the practitioners, right? So the hands on the keyboard types of folks. Our customers who are users are not always contributors. It's not always one and the same. So this program really takes advantage of giving a voice to those enterprise customers who are using our products day in and day out, and a place to come join with other like-minded technology enthusiasts and share their challenges, their solutions, how they're using our products, and so on. So this program helps us grow from just pure contributions, and we've had a lot of other mechanisms for trying to gather customer input and advice. And this really formalizes a program around how we collect it and giving them a direct opportunity to engage with not only our product teams, but also our business leaders within Red Hat.
Well, that's the thing. When I talk to customers, is they're great when they want to advocate amongst themselves, but there's always a lot of frustration in how do I get what I think is important up the priority list with the product teams and the open source project guys. So will you walk them through that process as well?
Yeah. So, one of the nice things about what we're doing here is we are not recruiting explicitly just to take customers and say, hey, will you go out and spend your time talking about Red Hat or interviewing with other customers? Yeah, that's part of it. We encourage them to do that. What we're really trying to do here is focus on gathering information from these customers. We want to be able to provide them a direct connection to our business units and our leadership teams to be able to listen to the market demands and everything that would happen in their particular industry. So, the way that we look at finding these folks is, there's a lot of passionate Red Hat people out there. You see some of these folks all over the place. Some of them even have tattoos and things like that all over. But, how do we leverage some of these folks to take their passion and give them a voice and provide it back to us? And so what we're really trying to do is be a little bit more strategic about how we're finding these folks and how we're identifying them, rather than take, say, the shotgun approach of, trying to gamify and hit all of our enterprise customers and hope that some of them respond. We're taking more of a strategic approach where we can handpick the top influencers in their persona type, if you will, and focus on what they're interested in giving us feedback on, their level of expertise in specific products, in specific areas, and so on. So as a result of that, we get a true, honest opinion from these hands-on users who are representing, their companies, their businesses, and how they're using our products. And the encouragement that we give them as far as externally advocating is more along the lines of, hey, share your user story, share what you're doing with it. Because honestly, you and I both know, all the research will tell us, any new prospective customer is going to listen to existing customers more than they're going to listen to me as the vendor. They don't trust me as much as they trust another customer who's actually using it. Fair enough. So the idea here is, if we have an opportunity to have our customers share their real world experiences, and that includes the good and the bad, we want to hear all of it. Because honestly, if customers are using our stuff and there's a challenge with it, we want to know what it's going to take for us to continue to develop that.
Do you think you guys will be addressing the skills that go with that? When I talk to customers, there's always this chicken and an egg issue where I would do that thing, it's pretty cool, but I don't have anybody who knows how to run it. Right. So then they don't upgrade, and then it takes them a while, and they wait for people to come through the door who may or may not have gotten those skills on their own. So is there a more formalized approach to how we might permeate the skills required to use the next great thing?
That's a great question. And, this is definitely something that we've talked about with our customers, and we hear from them. So in particular, with this program, the opportunity for customers to join this program is really to gain sort of an inside track into Red Hat. We want to treat them like Red Hat VIPs, right? And so the idea is they gain lots of different exclusive offers of various types, and including, of course, getting the customers together to talk amongst themselves. Just creating peer-to-peer communication is of value to them. But giving them exclusive access to various things like even early product access. We do beta testing with them, various validation type of things. And of course, there are privy to certain trainings and ongoings within our certification training teams. But ultimately, our goal is to broaden, and if I may, but you want to know more about containers, that's great. We offer these sessions. They can pick and choose. We want to educate them and empower them to do what they can, and they can learn more all about the portfolio. And if it's something that piques their interest, we have a lot of avenues for them to ping us offline or directly to be able to say, hey, how can I get more involved with this particular product, and go from there.
There's this little event that happened earlier this year, right around March, and it's pretty much changed everything that we know about IT and the rest of our lives that go with that. I sometimes refer to it as the BC era. So how has this whole new normal that we're trying to all cope with changed the way that IT teams think about skills and becoming familiar with new products? Are they adapting? And if so, what are some of the patterns you've seen?
That's a really interesting thing. I was asked this question previously about, why did we launch this now? Is it a COVID type of related program? And interestingly enough, if you look at our timeline for this program, we actually started this program way back in 2017. 2017, we spent the year working with legal, getting executive sponsorship and growing the program until we actually launched in January of 2018. So we've had this program out now for almost 3 years. Live with recruiting folks and so on. And we've done that because it's taken us this long to really develop, nurture, and grow the community to where it is today. But it is perfectly timed with the market, sublime, quite frankly, in that, the way we engage with these customers has always been video conferencing. It's always been online. And while we've seen our customers move from, say, the data center room where they might have been, or working at their desk in the office, they still continue to work at home. And what we find is all of our customers that are part of this program are pretty much hands-on administrators in some way, shape, or form, operators, developers in some cases, and they're all continuing to work from home. And so the outreach that we've had is really connected to the people. And, we focus more on the people than we do on that account or that business. In fact, we've had people who have, especially in this year in particular, have left the company that they started as a member in and rejoined a new company. And they've sent us pings and say, hey, can I still be an accelerator? The answer is absolutely yes. We care more about their expertise, their input, and what they're doing rather than just following the company or the business they're at. So it is about the people. And in this day and age right now, we've had some great continued engagement, even though people were shifting around jobs and that type of thing. It's definitely continued and been a very great, deep relationship with these folks. It's a lot of fun.
How product or technology centric is this versus, say, more process centric, where maybe you're talking to folks about how do I move to DevOps or AI ops or whatever else is coming down the pike? Is this kind of hands-on for the products or a little more on the process side and coaching, as it were?
Right. That's a great one. So the way we're engaging this community as a whole is, keep in mind, they're all hands-on the keyboard types. So dare I say technology geeks in some way. So, the idea is that most of our conversations, if not all of them, have to do with the technology itself. And it's not necessarily product specific. We absolutely do that. And we sort of classify our engagements in a few different ways. So we have some engagements that are essentially them listening to us, right? Where we want to educate them on a new product line or the roadmap or, whatever it might we want to get across to them, we present to them. But we also have the opposite, which is a very important element for us, where we have conversations where we ask a few questions and then our product and our business leadership teams have a chance to literally sit back and listen. So think of it more of a focus group type of environment where we ask a few questions and we get their feedback. And for those type of things, we've done everything from UX, UI design testing to, even testing marketing messaging and, definitely hands-on testing demos and things like that. But also the third type that we have is more of a discussion where we have business leadership will come on and say, hey, let's talk about, for example, hybrid cloud. What's happening in the market in your particular industries today? And we just have a back and forth discussion. We banter a bit, we learn, we educate, we get a chance to listen, they get a chance to listen, and we learn from each other, which is fantastic. So, the real value here is us deepening our relationship with our customers, getting to understand their pain points and where their market is going.
Are you hearing from these folks that they're concerned about their futures? When I talk to some of them, they're trying to figure out what's going to be automated in the future, what's going to be more AI driven, and where do they kind of start leaning in their efforts to be in the right place, say 2 years from now, versus kind of today. A lot of them may have a skill set that, frankly, an algorithm is going to handle in 2 years, and we can complain about that, but it is what it is. So how do we kind of make the adjustment?
Right. Yeah, that's a great one. We've heard from all these folks for the most part that their businesses are evolving. They have to, between digital transformation and things that have been happening in the market to that individual person having, old Unix skills that might be coming outdated in certain ways and certain scripting languages that they're using or whatnot. So part of the value that we've talked about already, and I mentioned it earlier, is that we want to deepen and basically broaden their experience and their expertise with all the Red Hat products. So this is an opportunity for these folks to come in, to learn more, experience what might interest them. They might be an administrator doing one thing, but they have an interest in, say, AI, ML, or something along those lines. We offer those type of sessions where they can come in, they can engage with, whether it's our CTO all the way down to our product managers, to be able to ask those right questions. How do I get more involved? Can I take a certification course? And so on. And so we spend a lot of time and effort increasing the value of their personal brand and their experience so that that person as an individual can grow along with, their business, of course.
All right. So short of joining the group and maybe hanging out on the Red Hat website, what is your best advice to people right now in terms of where they should be focusing their efforts to be more of a leader in their organization?
Absolutely. That question, I think, would probably point more towards specific technologies that we see. And because this program is more technical in nature, I can speak towards those specific types of technologies. We know that clearly AI and ML is coming, but that's a little bit more on the distant future. So as we look a little more short term, what's happening in the next year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years or so, we have a big transition to containers, to automation scripting, things like Ansible, being able to help grow. And, while automation in a word in its own sounds like it might replace a lot of folks, there's still a lot of knowledge and experience and experts that have to take the time to understand that language and be able to automate and write those things. So it's going to help businesses become more efficient. So I would say focus, look at the automation side, the container side, and most importantly, which we hear from all of our customers, is really hybrid cloud. Multi and hybrid cloud. We know multi-cloud has been happening for a while now, but hybrid cloud, getting our customers to be more efficient in developing their applications and getting their value add to the market faster seems to be the hot spot right now. And that's really where containerized deployment and development models can really help. Beyond that, we're talking, the AI ML type of stuff that's coming, and it's going to be here, no doubt. But before it becomes, standard everyday type of things, I think we got a little stepping stone to get there.
All right, great. Hey, Jeff, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mike. Take care.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
This is Digital Anarchist.
All right, guys, thanks for the toss. We're here with Kevin Kelly, Director of Education Programs at AWS Training and Certification. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So you guys just expanded this AWS Restart program. It's all about skills for the cloud. And I'm wondering, where are we in terms of availability for skills for the cloud? Do we have enough, or can we ever have enough? And is there still a general shortage? What's going on?
Yeah, today there is a cloud IT skills gap, and AWS Restart is one of the programs we have that's trying to help fill that gap. But there is a need for entry-level talent within that IT cloud skills gap that we're attempting to fill with this program.
And do you think this shortage of skills is having an adverse impact on the rate at which workloads are moving to the cloud? And do I need the skills to launch a new workload, or are we talking about skills for lifting and shifting existing workloads, or all of the above?
Yeah, it really is all of the above. Customers would like to deploy more workloads to the cloud, but often a limiting factor is people to do the work. And it's certainly lifting and landing new workloads from on-premise into the cloud, but it's also maintaining, expanding, and growing existing workloads that they need this entry-level talent, mid-level, and senior talent to help keep those workloads moving forward.
So walk me through the program a little bit. I know you've added some cities and some different universities, and I think you already had a bunch to start with. So how big is it, and what's the latest additions?
Yeah, AWS Restart is a program that we're particularly proud of. It's a skills development and job training program that prepares entry-level cloud workers for careers in the cloud. And it's really focused on building early career cloud talent with AWS skills development, but also aligning them with job opportunities. And we're really focusing on underemployed, unemployed, military personnel that are coming out and joining the civilian workforce, potentially for the first time, and their spouses. And the best thing about the program is that it's free to the learners. And we're preparing them for roles like cloud operations, cloud support associate, tech support specialist, site reliability engineer. There's a lot of titles, but it's those general entry-level roles that we're preparing these learners for.
Have you seen a spike in the downturn in the economy, I guess? I mean, certain vertical industries are hit harder than others, but are there more people coming to you now as a result of the current economic climate?
We saw a small slowdown in employers when COVID-19 originally started happening, but those employers have come back, and we have always seen a demand from the learner side. And This program doesn't require any prior cloud IT experience or skills. We're really looking for people that are motivated to join the program and have an interest and are willing to go through the 12-week program and are focused on employment at the end of that 12 weeks. So we've had no shortage of people interested in becoming learners in the program. We did have a small slowdown with when COVID originally emerged, but I think as employers are learning how to work virtual and remote, the demand for those workloads never went away. And so they're still looking for this talent.
Do most of the people who engage in the program, do they finish, or is there a drop-off rate, or what are the current challenges in getting people from the beginning to the very end of the program?
We deliver the program with collaborating organizations, and we actually vet very carefully. We do have a lot of learners that are interested in joining the program, and so it allows us to seek out those learners that are most enthusiastic and express an interest in completing the program, and that's going through the AWS Cloud Skills, Python, relational database, networking, security, a set of topics that we take them through. So we're very clear on what the expectations are around the learners. So we have a low dropout rate, quite frankly, for the program. And so most of the learners who begin the program actually complete the program.
So when I complete the program, are there more advanced courses that I can take? Can I get DevOps certifications? Can I get into, I don't know, are there AI technologies I can go into, or where do I go once I'm through the program?
So baked into the AWS Restart program is an expectation and assistance from us in terms of the fee for taking and preparing to pass the Cloud Practitioner AWS certification. So the candidates leave with one certification already, and then we do encourage them to take follow-on certifications in DevOps, Solutions Architect, Developer, sysadmin, whatever their focus is on the role that they get with the employer. The follow-on learning opportunities are really anything they would like to take up. We have learners that have taken follow-on training from AWS or one of our partners in conjunction with their employer, and also learners who have continued to pursue a degree.
Are IT leaders coming to you and saying, help me find these people? Are you helping with job placement? I mean, what do you guys do for the people after they've taken the training, and how do you help IT people find the people that they want to hire?
Yes, engaging with the employers is a part of the program. And so we've engaged with employers like KPMG, Sage, Centrica, Hive. They've all hired people from the Restart program. We work with the collaborating organizations, and we won't launch a new program in a new location unless there's demand in the local market, because we feel strongly about creating talent that doesn't have to move away to gain employment. And so thinking about employment and lining those employment opportunities up in collaboration with the organizations that we work with is a strong part of the program.
Are all these people newbies to IT, or some of them already have IT skills somewhere else that they're now trying to transition, or what's the mix?
The answer is yes. We have people that come to the program that have some IT experience. We've had people with UX design, web development experience, but lacked the cloud portion of that. And so we help them transition into those entry-level cloud roles. This is a global program. And so in the UK, we actually had somebody join the program who was a musician in the military for his entire career. And I think there's a tie there between music and math and computer science. And he proved that and went through the program and was employed by Centrica Hive. We had another person join the program in Dallas who was actually a seasonal photographer. And she joined the program and got a job at Zerka as a technical support specialist. And she's done quite well in that career. So we have people coming from lots of diverse and different backgrounds into the program. And again, IT skills are helpful, but they're not a requirement to join the program.
How is training going to be different going forward in this post-COVID era? Are we ever going back to in-classroom training, or will it all be virtual? some mix thereof, or how do you think this is all going to play out?
I think the new normal, when we're able to travel and get on airplanes and go to instructor-led training at a location, I think some of that will come back, but I think virtual, synchronous and asynchronous modality delivery is going to be with us in a significantly greater amount than it was before. The Restart program pivoted, like lots of training programs, to virtual remote delivery. And we have a morning and an afternoon session where the instructor synchronously leads a few hours of training and education. And then the remainder of the program is a mix of curriculum that's self-paced, that they can take on their own in conjunction with hands-on labs and knowledge assessments and project work. So that's how we're delivering the program. And I think that delivery modality allows us more reach and flexibility in terms of reaching locations where it might be more difficult to stand up an in-person instructor-led direct environment. So I think the new normal is going to be a mix, and with a greater amount leaning towards this synchronous and asynchronous virtual delivery modality.
How important are certifications these days? They seem to wax and wane in terms of popularity. Are people required to get certifications, do you think, just to get interviews? Do IT people value that, or they just want to know what your hands-on experience? Where are we on that continuum?
I think I think degrees have been sort of the bellwether credential for a long time. And I think certifications have become increasingly more important as a validation vehicle of your demonstrated skill set with an industry credential. I think micro-credentials, badging, and other ways to validate that you have a skill set, including going through and graduating from a program like Restart, are going to become increasingly more important. And I think it's going to be a continuum of those. I don't think degrees will go away. I don't think certifications will go away. And I think it'll be more of a mix as employers become increasingly more focused on what are the actual hands-on demonstrable skills that you can bring to the workplace quickly, as opposed to a more generalized skill set. And that's why we really have AWS Restart focused on those hands-on lab skills as part of the program.
So the program itself is free. Are you limiting the number of people who can participate? I mean, how big can this get?
We think this program can get quite large. Today, it's relatively small. We're in 7 cities in the U.S., and we're expanding into some new cities, including San Francisco, San Jose in California, New York City and Newark in New Jersey, and Martinsville, Virginia. But we've been up and running in Atlanta and Dallas and Washington, D.C. We continue to find more collaborating organizations to work with, like Europe and Perscalis and New College Institute. As long as we can continue to find collaborating organizations to work with and employment opportunities in the locations that we want to deliver in, we'd like to be everywhere we can be and help fill that cloud IT skills gap. So we're creating that talent in as many locations as necessary. The program is global. We're up and running in the UK, but also in France and the Netherlands. We recently launched in Nigeria, as well as Melbourne and Sydney in Australia. So we're really taking it global, and we're kind of following the demand and following the collaborating organizations that we're working with to deliver the program.
How do you determine which organizations to work with? I mean, would you go down to, say, I don't know, the high school level at some inner city program, or how far will you go?
What we're really interested in a collaborating organization is their ability to align the graduates with employment, because we really don't want to train just for the sake of training. For us, success is really a human outcome with a smiling face holding a badge at work. And that's what we really strive for. So we seek out the collaborating organizations that are aligned with our objectives around getting people employed and getting that first entry-level cloud IT role.
All right. So at the core of it, get yourself a certification, give yourself a raise. It's a win-win for everybody. What's your best advice to people about how they should prepare themselves to participate in this program?
Yeah, I think show up with enthusiasm. It really is the number one thing we're looking for, is people that can follow through the entire 12-week program and embrace the topics, even if they've never done Python scripting before, if they've never used Linux, or they don't know a lot about network security, relational databases, and the things that we're teaching. Come to the program with enthusiasm and a willingness to stick with the 12-week program, and then be immediately available for employment when it's done.
All right, one last question. Do you think a lot of people who may have the skills are somewhat intimidated by the cloud or the whole notion? And maybe part of this whole conversation is, how to get past the fear factor?
Yeah, that is, we spend a lot of time with people who are like, I didn't think I would apply for this program because I was a little intimidated by the cloud and computer science and engineering and IT. And we really encourage people to take a look at the program. And we've had, some of the examples I gave you with a photographer and a musician that have gone through the program and they've gotten employment and they're doing well.
Great. Hey, Kevin, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Turn up your CI/CD pipe and put your observability on. Ground control to Major Tom. 10, 9. Commencing countdown, engines on. 6, 5. Check ignition and may God's love be with you.
It's a great video commentary from Mitch, 2 great videos from Mike, Charlene O'Hanlon, Jasmine James. What more can you ask for? We'll be back tomorrow with some great fresh content for DevOps experience. DevOps experience is Thursday. Don't want to miss that. But we'll be back tomorrow for TechStrong TV. And we'll see you then. Until then, be safe, be well, be strong, be tech strong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.